Chapter 130. Tongning's eyes lit up like a torch, but she did not respond. And Zaheo's expression was a little complicated, but he still nodded his head. I will do what I need to do. Tongning, I won't force you. But you need to think about it carefully. There's no need to think about it. If it gets exposed, I will take full responsibility. We can't part ways, Tongning replied in a serious tone. Her tone was firm and unquestionable. Lanshi looked at Tongning thoughtfully and smiled, then, relax a little. By the way, have you seen the news about Hairue? Lanshi picked up a glass of red wine and poured them a glass at the same time. Two international superstars. For Hairue, this is a big loss. Hearing the words Hairue, Tongning's expression darkened. But she simply clinked glasses with Lanshi without saying a word. Tongning, be honest. Have you ever considered going to Hairue? Long Jie stood to one side, wanting to laugh but not daring to. Did Tongning really need to go? After all, she was the wife of Hairue's CEO. She already had half of Emoting's shares. Hairue isn't a place I can go whenever I want. Tongning knew how strict Emoting's management was. For Hairue, models like her were everywhere. They weren't even worth mentioning. I actually want to go to Hairue. I want the position of the wife of the CEO. Lanshi laughed. But, in reality, her words were 30% joking and 70% sincere. However, Emoting was too hard to get close to. He didn't give any woman a chance. Of course, there was no chance. Emoting's official wife was right in front of him. Tongning glanced at Long Jie, gesturing for her not to show off too much. Long Jie stuck out her tongue at Tongning unwillingly. After meeting with Lanshi, and Zaheo was ordered to drive Tongning home. Where are you staying? Hyatt Regency, Tongning replied. Seeing Zaheo start the car, she added, don't forget what you promised me. You won't interfere with my private life. Don't be so cautious. And Zaheo was a little helpless. Since I promised, I will definitely do it. It's just, Yangjing and Luo Hao aren't easy to deal with. I just need to be mentally prepared. Those two have already set up a lot of traps for Tongning, but they've never succeeded, Long Jie scoffed. Do they think Tongning is easy to bully? This was what Zaheo admired about Tongning. Even when she was surrounded by Yangjing and Luo Hao, she didn't lose out. In fact, her popularity continued to grow. They owe me a lot too. Tongning had heard about Zaheo and Yun Xian's story from the side. She also knew that Zaheo used to have a good relationship with Yangjing. As for the grudge between them, only they knew. Prepare for the signing ceremony. Tongning nodded her head. Of course she had to be prepared. Yangjing had been arrogant in front of her more than once, so she wasn't going to let her off easily. There was also Luo Hao. Naturally, she would not let that hypocrite off the hook for the trouble she had caused at the charity night and the various traps she had secretly set for her. After returning home and looking at the empty living room, Tongning originally wanted to give Emoting a phone call. But, remembering it was still 2 a.m., she didn't have the heart to do so. In the end, Emoting sent her a message first. Are you home? Tongning's heart suddenly lit up as she quickly replied. Did Long Jie tell you? I was worried, so I told Long Jie to keep me updated. Tongning smiled as she held onto her phone. She then gave Emoting a phone call. I saw the news about Hairue. How are things going? It's been resolved, Emoting replied casually. When will you be back? I still need to see a few people. Emoting's voice carried a sense of tiredness. I miss you. Tongning was stunned for a moment. In the end, she gathered her courage and said in a serious tone. As soon as Emoting heard the words I miss you, his body involuntarily sat up in bed. He wanted to immediately pull Tongning into his embrace. Not only did he want to, he immediately did so. He asked Lu Che to book the plane tickets and handed everything over to AAS. Emoting's style had always been swift and decisive. After evaluating the value of Deadly, he immediately negotiated with ASA and became their backer, taking control of the production. Afterwards, he immediately replaced all the staff involved in the production and sent out a letter from his lawyer, demanding they compensate for the damages and injuries caused to the actors. After a busy day, the first thing Emoting did when he finally had some free time was to receive a phone call from Long Jie. Long Jie said straightforwardly, Big boss, You are making our Tongning very upset. Huh. Emoting obviously didn't understand what she meant. Did you know that when Tongning returned home today, she was completely distracted? I asked her if she was afraid of your second betrayal. Guess what she said? On the other side of the phone, Longjia was extremely pleased. After all, it wasn't easy to tease the big boss. What did she say? You can ask her yourself. Longjia giggled as she hung up the phone. Emoting's lips curved upwards helplessly. Tongning's assistant really needed to be taught a lesson. In reality, wasn't he also a little upset? Especially when Tongning wasn't by his side. So, he picked up his phone and sent Tongning a message. I will never hurt you. So, can you tell me what you said to Longjia? Seeing the message, Tongning didn't quite understand. But, thinking about the phrase, I'm in love with Emoting, her face turned red. No. I think we are thinking the same thing. Emoting deliberately set Tongning up. What are you thinking about? I'll tell you when I get back. I may have to stay here for another week. Tongning's curiosity was piqued. However, when she thought about how she would only be able to see Emoting for a few more days, she felt a little disappointed. Emoting did not explain as he gently coaxed her to sleep. Tongning was truly tired. As she hugged Emoting's pillow, her breathing gradually returned to normal. The next morning, Zaheo went to pick Tongning up. She had accepted a shoot for the November cover of a top-tier magazine. However, just as she arrived downstairs, she heard the door open. Tongning held her breath as she saw Emoting appear in the doorway. Her entire body froze. She felt like she was dreaming. Emoting put down his luggage and opened his arms towards her. Tongning immediately pounced over and wrapped her arms tightly around Emoting's waist. I miss you. I like you. I may even love you, Emoting said as he kissed Tongning on the forehead. Hearing Emoting's confession, Tongning was stunned. I told you. I'll tell you when I get back. Tongning's eyes turned red as she left Emoting's embrace. Even when she was betrayed by Han Yufan, she had never felt this emotional. Tongning, I will only say this once. From now on, I will use my actions to prove it. Let's use our kiss as proof. As long as you can feel my love, kiss me and give me a response. Tongning lowered her head in thought for a moment before lifting her head. She hooked her arms around Emoting's neck and gave him a passionate kiss. Chapter 131. As soon as Emoting returned, Tongning completely let go of her worries. The couple hugged each other for a long time until Zaheo called to rush them home. Go ahead. I need to freshen up a bit before heading to the office, Emoting said gently. Tongning nodded her head. All the worry and fear in her heart had been swept away. Before Emoting, she had already been with Han Yufan for a few years. But she had never felt this way before. It was like her heart was tied to Emoting's. As soon as something happened to Emoting, she would feel pain from the pain. Thinking Zaheo was still waiting for her, Tongning left Emoting's embrace and left. Outside Hyatt Regency, Zaheo was sitting in a van waiting for Tongning. She was now a sign model of Chengtian, so they gave her the treatment and respect she deserved. Seeing Tongning appear, Zaheo immediately escorted her into the car. Just as they were about to close the car door, Zaheo suddenly said to Tongning, Tongning, are you aware that your goal is to become the top supermodel? If you knew this, you would grab hold of the last opportunity and work non-stop instead of indulging in love. Don't you understand that this is a ticking time bomb? I'm not trying to interfere with your private life. I simply want to remind you, if you are discovered, then everything you've done before will be for nothing. Tongning understood Zaheo's worries. After all, she had experienced the feeling of falling into hell before. But she wasn't Yoon Xian and Emoting wasn't in Zaheo. There are a lot of models overseas that are married and have children, yet they still walk the runway. That would depend on how capable the man you are hiding is. And Zaheo replied straightforwardly, of course, if you don't think there's anything to worry about, then pretend I never said anything. Tongning closed her eyes in deep thought. After quite some time, she finally said in seriousness, I am climbing so hard because of him. Did you think I would stay away from him for the sake of becoming a supermodel? For the sake of being a supermodel, I can give up on other things. But, for him, I will never give up. And Zaheo understood what Tongning meant. He suddenly thought back to the time he and Yun Xian were together. He was framed by Yang Jing and Luo Hao. They exposed his relationship with Yun Xian to the media, but Yun Xian misunderstood and thought he was the one who revealed their relationship. The argument and car accident was something he would never forget for the rest of his life. The atmosphere was a little awkward. To ease the tension, Zaheo coughed twice and changed the topic. In a bit, we'll be meeting with her Vision's chief editor. I've already made a verbal agreement with them to put you on the cover of their October issue. This is very important to you because you currently lack recognition, which means that you haven't made it to the A-list yet. So, we need her Vision's help to stand on the A-list. With the mention of work, Tongning nodded her head. I will be highly cooperative. Right now, you need to be aware of who your competitors are at Chengtian. Yang Jing has 2 and Luo Hao has 3. Of course, the ones that can truly threaten you are 1 each. But, you need to know, these 2 people are quite despicable when it comes to snatching resources. I've seen it. Tongning chuckled. Who knows, Yang Jing might also be taking resources from her Vision. And Zaheo was simply guessing. He never imagined he would actually come across a situation like this. Just as they arrived at the agency, they happened to see Yang Jing and one of her models walking out together. And Zaheo sneered as he asked Tongning to stay in the car. He then stepped out and stopped Yang Jing. Did you bring a model for an interview? I don't need an interview. Her Vision's chief editor is a good friend of mine. So, I'm just here to go through the motions. What? You're also here for an interview? But, President Lan didn't tell you to bring any models. It seems, over the years, you've managed to expand your resources quite a bit. Yang Jing's expression froze like she had been poked in a sore spot. You used me to climb up the ladder and took away my work notes. It seems you're quite good at it. I don't know what you're talking about. After speaking, Yang Jing turned to leave with her model. However, Zaheo grabbed onto her arm. If you're despicable, the heavens will deal with you. Yang Jing looked at Zaheo with a complicated expression. She then freed herself from his grip and left with her model. Afterwards, Zaheo returned to the van and said to Tongning, "Get out, we still need to go for an interview." If Yang Jing has already taken away the November front cover, then, Then we'll do whatever it takes to get it back. Zaheo suddenly laughed. Those 2 bitches owe me too much. So, it's not too much for me to take some back. Tongning did not say anything as she watched Yang Jing drive away in her sports car. If she wasn't mistaken, the person sitting behind Yang Jing was Lan Yu. Over the past few days, because of the news about Hairu A, Lan Yu's popularity had been suppressed. But, what was Yang Jing's motive for looking for Lan Yu? Lan Yu is in Yang Jing's car. Zaheo lifted his head and looked at Tongning with the same deep gaze. I suspect, based on Yang Jing's ambition, she wants to establish her own agency. If she can pull Lan Yu into her camp now, she will definitely be useful in the future. After all, your status is constantly rising and Lan Yu looks like you. She still has a chance to make a comeback. Lan Yu, it's time to go to hell. Tongning glanced at Zaheo but did not say a word. The 2 entered her Vision's office one after another to make an appointment with the editor's secretary. The secretary scanned Zaheo from head to toe before saying, I'm sorry, Mr. N. The editor had something urgent to attend to and has already flown to France. Is that what your editor told you? The secretary was a little embarrassed, but she did not deny it. In that case, before we came up, did your editor receive a phone call from Yang Jing? The secretary once again fell silent. This meant one thing. Yang Jing was once again setting up obstacles for them. However, she never expected, not only did this phone call stop Zaheo, it also stopped Tongning. Let's go. Tongning remained calm. Even though she had been stopped outside the door, she did not reveal a single trace of emotion. Perhaps, I've been out of the industry for too long. Zaheo shrugged. Tongning understood his frustration, so she did not say much. She simply asked Zaheo, if I manage to get a chance to talk to them, are you confident you can snatch the job from Yang Jing's hands? Of course. Zaheo nodded. Tongning nodded her head and pointed to the sofa. In that case, sit here and wait. When the editor comes out and finds out you know he hasn't gone to France, do you think he will be too embarrassed to give you a chance? Zaheo suddenly laughed. Tongning's method was a little crude, but it was a slap in the face. Chapter 132. After not returning to the office for a few days, the first thing Ting did upon returning to Hairue was to release a statement to clarify the rumors. The film Deadly would continue filming without changing the actors. The entire crew would continue filming the supporting roles until Hairue's actors recovered. As soon as Hairue made a move, the fans were immediately comforted. The speed at which Hairue dealt with the situation was astonishing. After everything was settled, Ting immediately sent Tongning a message. Did the interview go well? Not well, Tongning replied. She sounded like she was having a headache. Jing played dirty again. She even contacted Lanyu. It seems she wants to make a comeback and use Lanyu to control me. Ting looked at the lines of words that Tongning had typed out. The flames in his eyes were extremely cold. Luce, President. Luce received an internal call and immediately entered the office. Why haven't the rumors about Lanyu's bullying incident been released yet? Ting asked. I already made arrangements for this before Hairue got into trouble. I'm sorry, President. Because of the incident at Hairue, I didn't have the time to attend to it. Luce apologized guiltily. I will immediately make arrangements. No. Ting stopped him. Let's see what Jing wants to do first. If she dares to make another move, I will send her and Lanyu to hell together. Since Jing liked to get involved in Lanyu's business so much, he would make sure she was also involved. Otherwise, how could he answer to her good intentions? Luce seemed to understand Ting had other plans, so he calmed down. I understand, President. Also, go investigate her vision's background. Luce thought about the name for a moment before remembering it was a top-tier domestic magazine brand. President, aren't you afraid the madam will find out about this? I'll do it right away. Jing was best at using the connections she had accumulated over the years. Especially since most of them were in the gray circle, Jing knew how to make use of them. If Tongning went head-on, there was a chance she might be tainted by something dirty. This was a common practice in the modeling industry. Even if it wasn't to deal with Jing, he still had to be careful of Lan Shi. This was because many modeling agencies, in order to retain their models, would use underhanded methods. Those agencies with a powerful background would purposely make a mistake and use it as leverage to prevent them from leaving. He wasn't sure if Lan Shi had done this before. Since it was a game of background and he made her lose, then he didn't need to be her husband anymore. However, Jing needed to be able to afford it. Inside her vision's office building, Tongning and Zaheo were still sitting outside the chief editor's office. It had already been 3 hours. They blocked the door, preventing the editor-in-chief of her vision from going to the bathroom or coming out to eat. And Zaheo suddenly felt his anger dissipate. Thinking about how the woman in the office had to hold back, he couldn't help but let out a laugh. Especially as he looked at the sincere expression on her face, he realized this woman was truly two-faced. We can't keep waiting like this. Let's go to the bathroom, Tongning suggested. And Zaheo stood up as well. The two of them walked towards the door at the same time. Seeing the two of them leave, the secretary immediately reported to the editor-in-chief. However, when the editor-in-chief came out, the two of them happened to return. Her vision was a 30-something-year-old woman. She didn't have a lot of pride. So now that the two of them had bumped into her, how could she keep her face? At this time, and Zaheo immediately gave her a way out. Editor Lin, I know I've put you in a difficult position. Can you give me 10 minutes? Just 10 minutes. The editor glanced at Zaheo and then back at Tongning before replying in surprise. You and Tongning, come in first? In reality, Editor Lin had already noticed Tongning a long time ago because she was able to make TQ, an unpopular magazine, sell like hotcakes. However, she never expected to see her in person. She would be even more beautiful. I know you didn't want to see us because of Jing, but we came with sincerity, and Zaheo said sincerely, Editor Lin, we have known each other for many years. When I suddenly returned to China and asked you for the November cover, of course you would suspect me. I didn't tell you that Tongning was here for an interview because I wanted to show you our sincerity. But I've already signed a contract with Jing, Editor Lin said awkwardly. Editor Lin replied awkwardly, If you had told me earlier that Tongning was the photographer, instead of using our friendship to ask me for the cover, would I have avoided you? That's right. I know you and Yang Jing have gotten closer over the years. But when have I ever done something I wasn't confident in when I was in the industry? And Zaheo laughed. How about this? Tongning will be on the December cover. Editor Lin, I want November. You've already promised me that. Plus, I'm sure you've seen the results. In terms of professionalism and influence, do you think Yang Jing's model can compare to Tongning's? If you're going to shoot the November cover, we would rather not. And Zaheo used both the carrot and the stick to reduce the chances of the editor rejecting him to 0. Editor Lin was stunned for a moment before replying, how about this? Can you give me a day to think about it? After all, I need to give Yang Jing an IA satisfactory answer. Of course. But, Editor Lin, you should be aware of Tongning's current appeal. If she were to appear on the cover of another magazine, imagine the sales for November. After all, the Oriental trend and TQ are real figures. As for Yang Jing's model, what can she possibly produce? Editor Lin's expression was a little ugly, but she still nodded her head seriously. Also, Editor Lin, I hope your agency can keep my relationship with Tongning a secret. After all, Chung Tian has not officially announced Tongning's contract. When the time comes, Tongning's value will no longer be what it is now. This time, Editor Lin's expression turned even uglier. But she simply felt it was a pity that Yang Jing was in high demand. After all, Yang Jing was resourceful and wouldn't affect her magazine's sales. On top of that, if she breached the contract, it wouldn't look good on the surface. So, she chose Yang Jing and gave her a phone call. Xiao Jing. And Zaheo came looking for me. Of course, she was smart enough not to mention Tongning. After all, Chung Tian was a secret, so she didn't dare to reveal it. He also wants to be on the November cover. Did you agree? Yang Jing was still a little nervous. After all, and Zaheo's ability couldn't be underestimated. Of course, I'll give it to you. After all, we've already signed a contract, Editor Lin replied. Yang Jing smiled in ridicule. She had the attitude of a winner, but was she really going to let you have the upper hand? Would Emoting agree? Chapter 133. In the evening, it was rush hour, so all of her vision's internal staff had left. At this time, an unexpected figure appeared in her vision's office building. Without even making an appointment, the person was led directly into Editor Lin's office by the secretary. I didn't know Assistant Liu would grace us with his presence. I apologize for my lack of manners. Editor Lin stood up and extended his hand towards Liu Che with a smile. He was overjoyed at Liu Che's arrival. Could it be that Hai Rui was looking for a collaboration? Liu Che was already used to this type of compliment. He squinted his charming eyes and got straight to the point. President Imo would like to know, who was on her vision's November cover? Editor Lin froze for a moment as her smile froze on her face. However, the person sitting in front of her was Liu Che. His every word and action could represent Emoting's intentions. If she was able to collaborate with Hai Rui, her sales would definitely explode. But she and Yang Jing had been friends for many years. Plus, they had already signed a contract. It's Chung Tian's model, Mu Xia, right? Liu Che asked. Editor Lin looked into Liu Che's eyes in shock. She didn't understand how he knew about this confidential matter. I also know that the recently popular Tongning has also come for an interview. Why didn't you consider her? After hearing Liu Che's question, Editor Lin suddenly didn't understand why he was here. But she thought Liu Che was here because of Hai Rui. So she replied with sincerity, actually, when it comes to capability and popularity, Tongning is much better than Mu Xia. But, as you know, in this industry, connections are important. Although Tongning is very popular, she has no background or connections. On the other hand, Yang Jing is different. She can bring a lot of benefits to her vision. Who said Tongning doesn't have a background? Liu Che's tone turned serious as soon as he heard the words connections. What do you mean, Assistant Liu? Use Tongning for the November cover. Liu Che replied straightforwardly. How can you always think that Tongning doesn't have a background just because she keeps a low profile? If you didn't bully Tongning like this, President Mo might be in a good mood and pay you a penalty. But, since you've already resorted to avoiding him, in that case, President Mo will give you two choices. 1. Continue to use Yang Jing as a model and her vision will close down. 2. Change to Tongning and we can guarantee your November sales will break her vision's record. Your choice. Editor Lin was stunned as her eyes grew big. She suddenly understood what Lu Che meant. He wasn't here for Hai Rui. He was here for Tongning. Above all, she had no choice. As the king of the industry, it didn't take much effort for him to shut down a magazine. But she was confused. Why did Mo Ting stand up for Tongning? Editor Lin stared at Lu Che for a long time. After realizing that he wasn't joking, he nodded solemnly. I understand. She never imagined Tongning, the seemingly aloof Tongning, would actually. Hai Rui was there to protect her. I hope you can keep the fact that I came looking for you a secret. You can't let anyone know, including Tongning. Otherwise, you can imagine the consequences. Today, every word I said represents President Mo's meaning. You don't have to doubt it. After speaking, Lu Che stood up and prepared to leave. However, Editor Lin asked Lu Che in a trembling voice. Although it's a little presumptuous, can I know the relationship between Tongning and President Mo? Lu Che turned around. At first, he was a little hesitant, but after a moment of hesitation, he gave Editor Lin the answer, husband and wife. Husband and wife. Husband and wife? Editor Lin's eyes grew wide in shock as she almost lost her footing. She never expected Tongning to be the wife of the CEO of Hai Rui, the wife of the king of the entertainment industry. If Lu Che hadn't told her the truth, she would never have connected Tongning and Mo Ting together. Tongning was, at most, a talented and professional A-grade model. Who would have thought she had such a shocking background? Yet, Yang Jing actually tried to steal Tongning's resources? Oh God. She almost harmed her vision and almost offended Hai Rui Entertainment. Seeing Editor Lin's face turn red and pale, Lu Che could tell she had suffered a huge blow. So, before he left, he gave her a warning. If Yang Jing hadn't gone overboard, I don't think our president would have bothered to make a move. After all, the madam has always kept a low profile. So, Editor Lin, you need to watch your mouth. Our relationship is a secret. Please tell President Mo that I won't speak recklessly. Editor Lin wasn't stupid. Lu Che smiled and scratched his hair before leaving her vision's office. As he stepped out, he gave Mo Ting a phone call. President, everything's been settled. From now on, as long as it concerns Tongning, as long as I give the order, even if something happens to Hai Rui, you don't need to worry about it. Take care of her first, okay? Yes. Lu Che replied in seriousness. After giving his instructions, Mo Ting put away his phone with a cold gaze. Didn't Yang Jing love to steal? Then let her steal as much as she wants. With such a deep lesson in mind, Editor Lin quickly reacted. She immediately found Tongning's resume and threw Mu Xia's file away. Not only that, she also gave Zaheo a phone call and told him she agreed to let Tongning appear on the November cover. She also told them to make the necessary preparations because they would be heading to Moscow for an outdoor shoot. In reality, Zaheo wasn't completely confident because Yang Jing had stolen his many years of work notes. On top of that, Yang Jing's methods were ruthless. After so many years, he had almost underestimated Yang Jing's capabilities. Above all, as he left her vision that afternoon, he clearly saw a look of helplessness in Editor Lin's eyes. It was obvious she was leaning towards Yang Jing. So, what made her change her mind? However, Zaheo had no time to think about it. He had to prepare the contract. However, just as he was about to leave the office, Yang Jing leaned against the doorway and looked at him mockingly. You're not off work yet? I heard you went to request the cover for Editor Lin today? If you had said you wanted it earlier, I wouldn't have fought with you. Zaheo lifted his head and looked at Yang Jing. Not only was she vicious, the more he looked at her, the uglier she was. Oh, I remember now. President Lon wants to hold a grand press conference for you to announce your return. But, even if you do get on the cover of her vision, you don't have a model to support the magazine. Yang Jing, it doesn't matter who wins or loses today. The most important thing is to see who can go further in the future. and Zaheo finally found the information he was looking for. He looked into Yang Jing's eyes and replied coldly, "Do you think you have a chance of winning? I've already signed my contract." "Really?" And Zaheo sneered as he brushed past Yang Jing. "I bet you will receive a contract cancellation call today." Chapter 134. Yang Jing simply felt Zaheo was a loser, unwilling to accept defeat. So, she lifted her chin proudly. However, Zaheo simply felt she was ridiculous, like a dancing clown. Neither of them admitted defeat. In the end, Zaheo didn't waste any more time with Yang Jing. He simply whistled at her. "Sorry, I need to go deliver a contract to her vision." Yang Jing felt Zaheo's words were ridiculous. According to her relationship with editor Lin, the November cover of her vision would definitely be hers. Over the past few years, she had grown tired of playing these little tricks of Zaheo's. However, just as she was about to get overconfident, she received a phone call from her assistant. "Yang Jia, her vision has requested to cancel our contract." As soon as Yang Jing heard this, her mind went blank. After a few seconds, she finally asked angrily, "What's going on?" Editor Lin said she has already found a better model. But she shouldn't forget, we have already signed the contract. Yang Jing angrily stormed back into her office. How could she go back on her word? Immediately give her vision a phone call. "I want to see Editor Lin." Editor Lin said she is willing to pay double the compensation, but refuses to sign Xia. She has even transferred the money to the company's account. After hearing her assistant's words, Yang Jing angrily kicked the glass beside her. They had been friends for so many years. How could she just cancel the contract like this? Did she think she was easy to bully? Above all, she seemed to have forgotten that just a moment ago, she was bragging about her relationship with editor Lin in front of Zaheo and how unbreakable it was. Yet, not even 5 minutes had passed and their relationship had already collapsed. Editor Lin didn't even give her a phone call before directly canceling the contract and paying double the compensation. What exactly did Zaheo do to it? Yang Jing directly gave editor Lin a phone call to confirm what had happened. However, the other party treated her the same way they had treated Tongning and refused to pick up her phone. Zaheo, the contract in her hands had flown out of her hands just like that. Yang Jing gritted her teeth and yelled this name. It was like she wanted to rip the man to shreds. Of course, this wasn't the biggest blow. Late at night, the weather in October had already turned cold. Tongning stood in front of the window in a thin layer of clothing. After receiving a phone call from Zaheo, a pair of warm hands wrapped around her from behind and wrapped her up in her pajamas, protecting her from the cold. Ting. I've secured the front cover of her vision. Feeling safe, Tongning couldn't help but lean back as she said in a relaxed tone. But why does it feel so surreal? Your results are clear for all to see. There's nothing to doubt, Ting said gently as he wrapped his arm around Tongning's neck and tightened his grip around her neck. But we are going to Moscow for an outdoor shoot. I'm afraid of the cold. Tongning hid in Ting's embrace and grabbed onto his arm. I'll go with you? Are you still cold with someone warming your bed? Ting asked as he rubbed his face against Tongning's ear. Tongning let out a gentle laugh and nodded her head. You are like a stove. With you here, of course I won't feel cold. In fact, I will feel warm. Ting placed a kiss on Tongning's ear. He was satisfied with her response as he led her towards the bed. Go to sleep early. Tomorrow, you will be announcing that you will be a model for Chung Tian. You need to be energetic. If I sign with Chung Tian, I will be able to get access to more famous resources. Does that mean I will be one step closer to you? Of course. Thank you for your hard work, wifey. After receiving confirmation, Tongning was satisfied as she lay down on the soft bed with Ting. However, even Zaheo could see the hesitation in editor Lin's eyes. How could someone as observant as Tongning not understand? Deep down in her heart, she had already given up hope of landing the front cover. But, in the end, editor Lin relented and risked breaching the contract. What other reason could there be? It could only be because of Ting's pressure and Hai Rui's protection. Otherwise, editor Lin would not have changed her mind so quickly. Tongning had already guessed it, so she said she didn't think it was real. But Since Imo Ting had decided not to say it, she told herself to be muddle-headed for once. How could she destroy a person's heart that spoils and loves her? So, even though Imo Ting made her feel like she was using her background, she didn't mind it as much as she used to. At least, in front of the jerk Yang Jing, she didn't want to be calculative. Tomorrow, Lan Shi was to officially announce that she had signed with Cheng Tian. Thinking about Yang Jing and Luo Hao, who had always tried to stop her from joining Cheng Tian, she couldn't imagine how they would react. Late into the night, the sky was washed over by the heavy rain. Luo Hao had already fallen asleep, but he was quickly woken up by a series of hurried knocks on his door. Luo Hao put on his pajamas and opened the door to find Yang Jing leaning against the doorframe drunk and reeking of alcohol. "What are you doing here?" Luo Hao furrowed his brows. "Tomorrow, President Lan will be preparing a grand return ceremony for Nzaheo. I refuse to believe that you aren't upset at all." Yang Jing rushed into Luo Hao's front door holding a bottle of alcohol. "Did you know? Nzaheo stole my resources today. Do you know what this means? He will take revenge on us." "What does this have to do with me?" Luo Hao crossed his arms as he looked down at Yang Jing. "None of your business? Luo Hao, you've been hypocritical for so many years, haven't you? If it weren't for me, would you have the position of director today? Now that Nzaheo is back, don't you think President Lan trusts him even more? How much longer do you think you can hold on to your position?" Although Yang Jing was swaying left and right, her words were still logical. "Get this straight. We were the ones that exposed his relationship with Yun Xian together. You took away his position, and I took away his resources. Neither of us can escape responsibility. It's all the same." "What are you trying to say? I want to work with you." Yang Jing pointed at Luo Hao and said in seriousness, "As long as we work together, Nzaheo has no chance at all. President Lan hasn't given him permission to manage an artist yet, but he's already planning for his own future. Haven't you sensed the danger? Cooperate with me? Didn't you look for Lan Yu in private? Did you think President Lan wouldn't know what you were doing?" Luo Hao laughed mockingly. "What? Do you want to start your own company? I have confidence. I can take away all the resources in my hands. What about you?" It seemed this was her plan. Even if she didn't, she still wanted to threaten Lan Shi. After all, Nzaheo currently had no bargaining chips. "What do you want President Lan to promise you?" "Fire Nzaheo. Otherwise, I will immediately take my artists and jump ship." "President Lan may not be threatened by you. Who knows?" Yang Jing was determined to give it her all. However, who said Nzaheo didn't have any bargaining chips? Tongning and Imo Ting, who was backing her up, were his biggest bargaining chips. Yang Jing seemed she was digging her own grave by taking a shortcut for herself. Chapter 135. Inside the dimly lit room, the two women looked at each other. However, Luo Hao felt Yang Jing was too confident. Over the years, if Yang Jing had relied on her methods to obtain resources, then Luo Hao's way of doing things was closer to Tongning's. They both liked to stay calm and watch their prey get impatient. Above all, Yang Jing had recently been disturbed by Tongning, and now she was being pressured by Nzaheo. She had already lost her composure. "President Lan isn't as easy to deal with as you think. Hypocrite. Coward." Yang Jing stared into Luo Hao's eyes and scolded. "You always seek victory through stability, even if it means sacrificing someone. If you don't want to cooperate, then forget it. Tomorrow, I will go look for Lan Shi myself." After speaking, Yang Jing stood up to leave. However, Luo Hao grabbed onto her arm. "I didn't say I won't help you. Let's go see President Lan together tomorrow." Luo Hao knew Nzaheo's threat was far greater than Yang Jing's. Since there was an opportunity in front of him to take him down, he wasn't going to let it go. The next day, noon. Cheng Tian Entertainment CEO's office. Lan Shi looked at Yang Jing and Luo Hao in surprise. She lifted her chin slightly and asked, "What's the matter? Speak. I will be holding a press conference at 2 p.m. President Lan, I am here to hand in my resignation." Yang Jing calmly handed over her resignation letter. "Me too." Luo Hao also pulled out an envelope and placed it on Lan Shi's desk. Lan Shi's expression changed as she asked curiously, What do you mean by this? We are really happy that Zaheo has returned. But, after all, we had a disagreement with him in the past. If we continue to stay here, it would be awkward for the three of us. Since he has returned, then we should leave. We hope President Lan can fulfill our wish. Lan Shi's expression was a little complicated. She then revealed a cold smile. Are you threatening me? President Lan, yesterday, I signed a contract with her vision. However, Zaheo interfered and forced them to cancel the contract. I really don't want to make things difficult for you, but I also don't want to make things difficult for myself. So, I hope you can fulfill my wish. Lan Shi gripped onto her resignation letter. She finally understood their intentions. They wanted to force her to kick Zaheo out. As a CEO, how could she allow herself to be threatened by two managers? You can leave first. I will do as you wish. Yang Jing and Luo Hao looked at each other. The huge rock hanging in their hearts had finally been lifted. Since Lan Shi did not approve of their resignations, it meant she was weighing the pros and cons. As for Lan Shi's I will do as you wish, in other words, today's inauguration press conference would turn into a resignation press conference. Above all, they had Cheng Tian's resources in their hands, while Zaheo had nothing. Yang Jing refused to believe that Lan Shi would be willing to throw Cheng Tian into chaos because of Zaheo. Lan Shi watched as the two left. It took a lot of effort for her not to throw her resignation letter at their faces. These two arrogant bastards actually dared to threaten her? Do you want to resign so badly? It was worth fulfilling. At 2 p.m., the press conference was held as usual for Cheng Tian. Today was a day worthy of celebration. The former artist's director, Zaheo, was returning to Cheng Tian to help them achieve glory. At the same time, all sorts of news regarding Zaheo were dug up by the media. In particular, his relationship with Yun Xin was once again hyped up by the media. At this moment, Tongning was already on her way to Cheng Tian Entertainment. She was dressed in a gold lace dress with a diamond necklace around her neck. Her soft and curly hair was draped over her shoulders, and her makeup was thick but not flashy. Compared to her usual clean and tidy style, she was completely different. Mo Ting, who was sitting beside her, couldn't help but take a few extra glances at her. What's wrong? Tongning turned and asked Mo Ting as she revealed her delicate neck. You don't recognize me anymore? Normally, Tongning didn't fight for attention and was quiet and pleasant. But at this moment, Tongning was fashionable and dazzling like a queen. This seemed to indicate a change in Tongning's mentality. When she was trying to get revenge, she tried her best to keep a low profile. But from today onwards, she was going to be dazzling and eye-catching. Mo Ting sat up straight and hooked his arm around Tongning's chin. Looking at her full red lips, he couldn't help but place a kiss on them. His lips were stained with lipstick. Tongning was stunned for a moment. She smiled gently and helped him wipe it away. President Mo, what do you want to do? I want to swallow you whole. Mo Ting stared at Tongning as he mumbled in a deep and sexy voice. So, you like the way I put on lipstick? Very beautiful, Mo Ting admitted. From now on, wear lipstick more often. Okay, help me wipe it off. Tongning gently nodded her head. She never expected such a simple action would be able to please this handsome man. Okay, we're close to Cheng Tian. I'll get off here. If anything happens, give me a call. Even if you didn't tell me to, I would have had no choice but to contact you. Who asked you to be the only person close to me? Mo Ting smiled in satisfaction as the corners of his lips curved upwards. His smile seemed to have a captivating charm. Tongning waved at Mo Ting. After Mo Ting left, she contacted Lan Shi. There was still half an hour until the press conference. Under Lan Shi's arrangements, Tongning entered Cheng Tian's secret waiting room and quietly waited for the show to begin. All preparations were in place. At this time, Zaheo found out from Lan Shi that Yang Jing and Luo Hao had threatened her. Lan Shi was furious. Yang Jing and Luo Hao seemed to have lost themselves in the abyss of power and desire. It seemed they couldn't see anything else. Ngu, it's great that you've returned. As soon as Zaheo entered Cheng Tian, he ran into an old staff member who seemed to be looking forward to his return. Zaheo looked at the other party and smiled, not taking it to heart. However, just as they entered the elevator, Yang Jing also entered with Mu Xia. They looked at each other for a moment before Yang Jing hid her gloomy expression and turned her back to Zaheo. And Gu, now that you've returned, you won't be leaving again, right? And Zaheo looked at Yang Jing's back, at this scheming woman. His gaze was complicated, but he didn't forget to respond, of course. Hearing this, Yang Jing let out a humph from her nose, even though no one could hear her. She waited until all the staff had left the elevator before speaking to Zaheo. I don't think President Lan is completely satisfied with you. After all, you abandoned Changtian and went overseas. What do you think? Whether she's satisfied or not, it's not up to a small manager like you to decide. And Zaheo replied coldly, Really? Don't embarrass yourself later. Yang Jing's words had a deeper meaning. She didn't want Zaheo to see her face at all. And Zaheo, of course, understood the meaning behind her words. At the same time, he replied with a deeper meaning. I've already guessed correctly the phone call to cancel my contract. What else do you think I can guess correctly? Yang Jing, remember, Lan Shi didn't rely on you to get Changtian to where it is today. Chapter 136. Yang Jing slightly revealed her side profile to Zaheo as the corners of her lips curved upwards. Due to the reflection of the light from her glasses, she looked gloomy and strange. When had she, Yang Jing, ever been afraid? And Zaheo did not say another word. After all, a good show was about to begin. I'll wait to see you get kicked out of Changtian. After speaking, Yang Jing led Mu Xia out of the elevator, leaving Zaheo alone with a helpless look on his handsome face. Inside a secret waiting room, Longjia was playing with her phone as she looked up at Tongning. Are you nervous? Tongning closed her eyes and shook her head. I just want to know what expression Yang Jing will have when the time comes. Do you even need to ask? She will definitely go from extremely excited to lifeless eyes, haha. Just thinking about Yang Jing's frustrated expression made Longjia feel good. They had already crossed swords so many times. She admired Yang Jing for always being so energetic. Even though she had lost to Tongning countless times, she was always able to quickly make a comeback with the determination to stop Tongning. It was hard to tell where she got her courage from. This time, Lan Shi won't let her off so easily. Tongning opened her eyes. They were bright and resplendent. Of course, if my staff dares to force me, I will directly kick them out. Previously, when Big Boss Authority was challenged, didn't he remain silent for a long time? You can only say these words in front of me, Tongning reminded Longjia. She didn't want anyone to use her against her. Don't worry. I'll just wait to watch the show. Longjia sealed her mouth as she quietly scrolled through her phone. At this time, it was time to let Yang Jing continue dreaming. 2 p.m., the press conference officially began. Before Luo Hao entered the venue, Yang Jing looked for him to confirm. Are you sure President Lan will let Zaheo go today? Why hasn't she canceled the press conference yet? She has already confirmed she will announce something else. There's no need to cancel it. Plus, isn't it good to give Zaheo a little bit of hope? Luo Hao was dressed in a fitted black handmade suit. He looked tall, handsome, and heroic. Yang Jing scanned the venue and nodded her head in agreement. Of course I want to see him lose all face. Luo Hao's lips curled into a smile as he strolled towards the entrance of the arena, waiting for Lan Shi's arrival. Changtian's large venue was currently filled with reporters and media. Luo Hao escorted Lan Shi into the venue and sat down at the front of the stage. In reality, the reason why the media reacted so strongly today, apart from Lan Shi's publicity, was because of the explosive news Zaheo and Yun Xian had released a few years ago. What exactly happened? Up until now, the media had not been able to find out the truth. Lan Shi, who was dressed in a high-class business suit, appeared smart and capable. On her left was the other higher-ups of Changtian and on her right was Luo Hao. At this moment, Yang Jing was standing below the stage, quietly observing the situation. Hello, friends from the media. Lan Shi held onto the microphone and took the initiative to greet the reporters below the stage. Firstly, I would like to welcome all of you. Today, Changtian Entertainment is hosting this press conference because we have 3 pieces of good news to share with everyone. Firstly, Changtian Entertainment is preparing to enter the film and television industry. We are currently preparing to film our first film. When the time comes, we would like to ask for everyone's support. Secondly, Changtian Entertainment's subsidiary company will be opening for business at the end of the month. We are currently recruiting and hoping everyone with ambition can join our big family. Hearing Lan Shi's two announcements, Yang Jing unconsciously relaxed. She knew Lan Shi had not mentioned anything about Nzaheo in the first two announcements. She had decided not to mention anything about Nzaheo and use something else to cover up Nzaheo's return. So, she subconsciously glanced at Luo Hao. They both seemed to have a card up their sleeves. However, at this time, Lan Shi suddenly announced the third piece of good news. As for the third piece of good news, I would like to announce to everyone that Changtian's best manager, Mr. Nzaheo, will be returning to Changtian as their top manager. He will continue to serve them as their top manager. As Lan Shi spoke, she stood up and pointed towards the exit of the venue with her right hand. The reporter's attention was drawn to Nzaheo, dressed in a white suit, like an elegant prince emerging from a painting. Yang Jing and Luo Hao's faces turned bright red. To be exact, Lan Shi's action was like a fiery slap across their faces. Luo Hao lowered his head. It was unclear what he was thinking. Meanwhile, Yang Jing glared at Lan Shi angrily. Wasn't Lan Shi afraid that she would take all the resources away? This was impossible. Yang Jing panicked. All she could do was watch as Nzaheo slowly walked towards the stage. In actual fact, if one paid a little attention, it wouldn't be hard to notice that Yang Jing's entire body was trembling. Lan Shi glared coldly at Yang Jing like she was looking at a clown. It wasn't until Nzaheo arrived in front of her that she continued to speak to the media. Next, our manager, Nzaheo, will continue to announce the good news. Nzaheo looked at everyone and gave a deep bow before straightening up. He then said to everyone in high spirits, to be able to return to Changtian and return to President Lan's side. I feel very warm and happy. So, I have brought a present for President Lan. After speaking, Nzaheo stretched out his right hand towards the entrance of the venue. Attracting everyone's attention, a tall figure appeared on the red carpet at the entrance. She looked fashionable and noble. She had a unique beauty that belonged to her. She was no longer as plain and clean as she usually was. Oh God! Tongning! What's going on? Why is Tongning here? The reporters immediately went crazy. Tongning was like a legend. She wasn't in the industry, yet she was everywhere. She didn't even make an appearance to explain the incident with Lan Yu. How could she appear at Changtian's press conference? That's right, it's Tongning. She was once the top model in Beijing, the winner of the annual Model Awards Special Contribution Award, and one of the hottest topics recently. Today, I will officially announce that she has signed with Changtian Entertainment. Nzaheo's words were extremely infectious as he brought the entire venue to a climax. As for my first task upon returning to Changtian, it will be to become Tongning's personal manager. I believe she will still be the superstar on the runway. From now on, she will only get better. As Nzaheo spoke, he looked at Yang Jing and Luo Hao with a mocking gaze. It was as if he could see a sense of anger and unwillingness in their eyes. It was as if he could hear them saying, Nzaheo actually brought Tongning along. He actually signed Tongning behind her back. How dare Lan Shi play them like this? But could they not handle the excitement? There was still the main event to come. Chapter 137. Tongning actually signed with Changtian Entertainment. This was something no one expected. After Tongning left Tianyi, there were many agencies that offered her an olive branch, including Star Age and Creative Century. However, no one expected Tongning to skip the B-list and become a sign model of the big agency Changtian Entertainment. What was even more surprising was, Nzaheo was actually Tongning's personal manager. Was it because their experiences were similar? Or was it because they had both experienced low points in their careers? One was once a top model, and the other was once a top manager. These two were actually a strong combination. The media predicted that Changtian was going to create a storm in the modeling industry. Yang Jing watched as Tongning slowly walked towards the stage. She looked at the woman that she had racked her brains to stop from entering Changtian. Through her thin glasses, her eyes burned with anger and hatred. She had told herself many times that Tongning would never be able to enter Changtian. But Was this what she meant by impossible? Yang Jing's hands clenched tightly into fists as a wave of anger spread through her body. Under the countless cameras, Tongning walked confidently onto the stage. Afterwards, she faced the media and bowed politely to them. Hello everyone, I am Tongning. Ever since Tongning announced her comeback, she had made it all the way to where she was today. From the Oriental trend to TQ, as a model, she had used her stunning side to conquer the public. As a celebrity, her low profile and indifference from the rest of the world prevented many attempts at slandering her, and the media no longer dared to defame her. She had slapped them in the face too many times. Especially after the incident with Lan Yu, her unapologetic attitude had won her applause. In everyone's eyes, Tongning was like a clear stream in the modeling industry. Tongning, say a few words. The reporters cheered from below the stage. Tongning smiled and nodded at the crowd as she received the microphone from Zaheo. I believe in my choice. In that case, Changtian Entertainment also has many outstanding models. Do you mind competing with them on the same stage? For example, Li Danny and Hua Yuan. Li Danny was Yang Jing's last trump card, the only one she could use. So, hearing Li Danny's name, Yang Jing looked at Tongning with ridicule. Li Danny was an international model and was only 21 years old. Did Tongning want to surpass her? In her dreams, Tongning subconsciously glanced at Yang Jing as the corners of her lips curved upwards. She then replied, every one of us has our own unique beauty. We all have our own unique highlights. As for me, I still have a long way to go. What she meant was, she simply wanted to walk her own path in peace and ask the media to let her off and not compare herself. Tongning, I want to ask you a question. From what I know, you previously submitted your resume to Changtian Entertainment, but I heard they rejected you because you were too old. What method did you use to change their opinion of you? As soon as these words were out, the reporters were shocked. They never expected Tongning to join Changtian with such an inside story. From the beginning, Tongning remained calm. However, her gaze suddenly landed on Yang Jing. Lan Shi also looked at Yang Jing. Even Luo Hao lifted his head and looked straight into Yang Jing's eyes. Yang Jing suddenly began to panic. What was the meaning of this? Tongning, can you answer this question? The reporters continued to ask, but this question was too sharp. So, Lan Shi picked up the microphone and said, actually, I have something else that I would like to announce to the public today. The reporters looked at Lan Shi confusedly. They couldn't understand what she wanted to do. Afterwards, Lan Shi pulled out a paper envelope with the words resignation letter written on it. As soon as Yang Jing saw it, her heart skipped a beat as she panicked. Changtian's old hero, Miss Yang Jing, has handed me her resignation letter today. I am extremely grateful to her for all the hard work and contributions she has made to Changtian over the years. I simply hope that from now on, your life will be even more exciting. So, I officially approve your resignation letter. This was a public event with a large number of reporters present. Yet, Lan Shi approved Yang Jing's resignation letter in front of everyone. Yang Jing felt her entire body tremble as she almost fell to the ground. This was the bargaining chip she used to threaten Lan Shi. Who would have thought? Lan Shi would use it to kick her out of Changtian. Kick her out of Changtian? She had personally handed in her resignation letter. She had personally cut off her own path of retreat. How could she be fired by Changtian, just like that? Yang Jing never imagined Lan Shi would be so ruthless to kick her out in front of so many people. Yang Jing, come up here and say a few words to everyone. Lan Shi waved at Yang Jing. She had handed in her resignation letter at the same time as Luo Hao, yet Lan Shi had kicked her out. Yang Jing sneered. Although her body was drained of energy, her pride didn't allow her to lose her composure. So, she walked over to the stage and faced the media. Firstly, I would like to thank Changtian Entertainment for all the help they have given me over the years and President Lan's concern. However, regarding my resignation, I have nothing to say. I simply hope for the best from now on. That's right, I would like to announce that I will be officially leaving Changtian. However, before I leave, I will make sure to hand over my duties properly. Please rest assured, President Lan. Will Miss Yang take one of Changtian's models with her? The media's question pierced straight into Yang Jing's heart. A manager with no self-awareness like you will never be hired by any agency. Let me tell you, Yang Jing, from now on, you have nothing to do with this industry. As long as I, Lan Shi, am around, you, Yang Jing, will never have a chance to make a comeback. Yang Jing's entire body trembled. This was the first time Lan Shi had humiliated someone in such a way. This was humiliation. An obvious humiliation. Yang Jing couldn't take it anymore as she turned around and walked away from Lan Shi. Pride? Did she still have any? Even her last bit of pride had been torn to shreds by Lan Shi. Yang Jing ran all the way down to the 3rd floor. In the end, she bumped into Luo Hao. As their eyes met, Yang Jing held it in for a moment. As she brushed past Luo Hao, she said, "Help me get revenge." Although Lan Shi had made Luo Hao stay, Luo Hao was well aware he would end up like him. So, he wasn't going to let them off easy. "I promise you, I will do whatever it takes." Yang Jing relaxed as she turned around and left Changtian. In the end, she hid in an unknown street corner and broke down in tears. Who would have thought she would end up like this? It didn't matter. She still had Lan Yu. Chapter 139. After Chang Tian's press conference ended, Tongning went to her vision for a meeting arranged by Zaheo. That evening, Zaheo drove Tongning home. "Although you have 3 days off, you need to let me know where you are going and what you are doing. At least, let me know what to do." Zaheo turned to look at Tongning. "As for the outside world, you have always done a good job of blocking it out, so I won't make any special arrangements." "I know what to do." Tongning nodded as she closed her eyes to rest. "Also, send the flight number to Longjie. When the time comes, I will take the flight myself." "Why?" Zaheo looked at Tongning questioningly. Then, he seemed to have realized something as he rejected. "Are you planning to bring someone else with you?" "No way. That is during your working hours. The chances of you being photographed are too high." Tongning opened her eyes and glanced at Zaheo without saying a word. "Are you two that inseparable?" "Yes, inseparable." Tongning nodded with a gentle smile. "What exactly do you see in that man? If he really cares about you, would he let you fall into danger time and time again without helping you?" Zaheo couldn't understand Tongning's insistence. To him, it was pointless for a man to rely on a woman to live off a woman, especially in this industry where there were so many colors and complexities. If he truly understood Tongning, he wouldn't be a burden to her. Tongning continued to smile, but Longjie rolled her eyes in the back. She couldn't help but think to herself, "That's because you don't know her husband is a Mo Ting. Do you think a small manager like you can casually see Big Boss? If I told you, you would be scared to death. You promised not to ask about my private life." Zaheo wanted to say something else, but Tongning's words cut him off. He simply nodded his head. "What else can I say? I know exactly what I am doing. I also know exactly what kind of person I like." After speaking, Tongning got out of the car with Longjie's help. Soon, her figure disappeared through the luxurious entrance of Hyatt Regency. Although Tongning explained this way, Zaheo still felt a man that relied on a woman wasn't a good person. However, Chang Tian was currently in a mess. He needed to return to the agency to help Lan Shi clean it up. "Tongning, are you really not going to tell manager and about Big Boss?" Longjie followed behind Tongning with a smile on her face. "But I really want to tell him." Tongning opened the door and stepped into the house. As soon as she smelled the delicious aroma of food, the corners of her lips curved upwards. "I still don't fully trust him." Longjie smelled the aroma and thought about Big Boss cooking skills. She couldn't help but swallow her saliva. "I want to eat too." "In that case, let's go together." Tongning did not mind. Although Longjie didn't want to disturb the couple, she couldn't resist the temptation of the fragrance. The three of them sat at the same table, but the food they ate was completely different. Longjie froze for a moment before understanding dawned on her. "Do the two of you have to split your meals into 2 portions? What else?" Tongning laughed. "Can I eat the same as you? Do you still want your figure?" Big Boss, that's great." Longjie tried to suck up to Mo Ting, but Mo Ting simply continued to look at his documents with a serious expression. Tongning looked at Mo Ting and subconsciously took the documents from his hands. Her meaning was obvious. Eating like this was bad for your stomach. Emoting turned his head and glanced at Tongning. He stretched out his hand and stroked her hair, not insisting any further. Seeing this, Long Jia quietly put down her bowl and chopsticks and left the table. I'm leaving. Eh? You're not going to finish your food? No, I'm never coming to your house to eat again. Long Jia waved her hand as she grabbed her bag from the sofa and left Hyatt Regency. She felt like an ordinary person that had broken into the king and queen's castle and was being tortured to the point of discomfort. After dinner, Tongning and Emoting leaned against each other and watched a movie. Without their celebrity aura, they were just like a normal couple. The couple watched an educational film about caring for stray dogs. Tongning was so moved that she burst into tears on Emoting's shoulder. Meanwhile, Emoting sat to one side and helplessly handed her a tissue. Was it that touching? Tongning nodded her head. However, through the flickering blue screen, she secretly glanced at Emoting's perfect side profile. It wasn't because the film was touching, it was because of the person watching it with her. The most charming man in the world was the one that could command the wind and clouds in his career. A woman's most reliable support was always at home. No matter how much jewelry she had on her, it was nothing compared to waking up to a glass of warm water by her bedside. Ting, will you be busy with work for the next 3 days to make time for Moscow? Tongning asked gently. Actually, I can. Do it myself. No. Emoting rejected straightforwardly. Moscow is a relatively cold place. I don't want you to be wronged. Tongning did not say another word. She simply placed a kiss on Emoting's chin. As she thought about the disdain Zaheo had towards Emoting, the smile on Tongning's face grew wider. Once you see a person, you will immediately know if they are living off a woman. After an entire day of frustration, Yang Jing had nowhere to go. All she wanted to do was grab onto her last chance and make good use of Lan Yu. However, she seemed to have forgotten, Lan Yu was never one of her artists. Although she had been frozen out by Star Age, it had nothing to do with her. Yang Jing anxiously tried to find Lan Yu. She went to all the places she frequented, but Lan Yu refused to pick up her phone. It wasn't until late at night that her phone finally connected. Hello? Lan Yu? I'm at the night bar. Come and play. Lan Yu said simply before hanging up the phone. Yang Jing had a bad feeling, but she assumed Lan Yu was simply out to relax. But by the time she arrived at the bar, Lan Yu was wearing a hat and dancing. From her exaggerated movements, it was obvious something was wrong. Yang Jing ran over and grabbed onto Lan Yu's wrist. However, Lan Yu was still in a daze. She broke free from Yang Jing's grasp and pointed at her as she yelled, "Who are you?" Seeing Lan Yu's confused expression, the word drug addict suddenly appeared in Yang Jing's mind. But she was only 16 years old. Come with me. I'm not leaving. Lan Yu pushed Yang Jing aside, grabbed a bottle of beer, and threw it at Yang Jing's head. Are you crazy? I don't even know you. Why are you dragging me? Hearing the loud bang, the surrounding people stopped dancing and looked at the commotion in the corner. Seeing Yang Jing had fainted, Lan Yu pulled down her hat and ran out of the bar in shock. Because of the dim lighting, the surrounding people couldn't see Lan Yu's face clearly. They simply surrounded Yang Jing and asked her with concern, "Are you okay?" Yang Jing woke up and rubbed her head. At this time, someone finally asked, "Was the person that threw a bottle at you Tongning?" "I think she was." Chapter 140. Tongning? Hearing this name, Yang Jing suddenly woke up as she apologetically begged, "I hope you can keep this a secret. Don't worry, we won't tell anyone. You really don't need to go to the hospital? In an environment like this, how could rumors not spread? I really don't need to." Yang Jing stood up with the help of her staff. After rubbing her head and confirming she was fine, she carefully left Night Color Bar. After returning to her car, she carefully tried to remember how Lan Yu looked. She was wearing a hat, so no one had discovered her real identity. As a 16-year-old, it was impossible for her to enter a bar, which meant she must have used a fake ID. After all, Lan Yu was on drugs and had no future. But, at this time, she could still take the opportunity to slander Tongning. At least all the pain and suffering she had gone through wasn't in vain. The name Xiao Tongning was given to people for no reason. Not only this, Yang Jing also wanted to ruin Tongning's collaboration with her vision. So, she parked her car on the side of the road and gave editor Lin a phone call. She told her there was a huge scandal and that she wanted to meet with her. Editor Lin already knew about everything that happened in Changtian today. Although she no longer wanted to talk to Yang Jing, since Yang Jing said it was related to her vision, after thinking for a moment, she decided to give her the address. Time quickly passed, and it was already late into the night. The keywords Tongning taking drugs and hitting people slowly rose from the bottom of the search rankings. Yang Jing excitedly arrived at Editor Lin's home. She sat down on the sofa and handed the phone to Editor Lin. Tongning has a stain on her record. You can't use her on the front cover. Editor Lin propped her head up with her left hand and grabbed the phone with her right. She threw the phone back to Yang Jing. Whether this is Tongning or not, you know very well. Yang Jing, I'm only reminding you because I'm your friend. Tongning has someone backing her up. No matter what you do, you won't be able to touch her. Who is it? Yang Jing was stunned. She never expected to hear something like this from Editor Lin. I won't tell you, but don't challenge someone's bottom line so easily. Otherwise, you may not even be able to stay in Beijing. That's impossible. If Tongning had someone backing her up, she wouldn't be climbing up the ladder so hard. You know how hard it is for others? Then can you do less dirty things and do good deeds for yourself? Editor Lin scoffed. Yang Jing, I know you've been kicked out by Cheng Tian, but I have something to say to you. A pitiful person must have a hateful side. Try and touch Tongning again. Let's see if they'll make your life a living hell. Yang Jing glared coldly at Editor Lin. She finally understood what it meant to be pushed when a wall was down. The entertainment industry was just that realistic. Now that she was down, it served her right to be bullied. Even if you don't think about yourself, you have to think about your mother. Being competitive all her life, she will not have a good ending. After hearing this, Yang Jing suddenly stood up and glared angrily at Editor Lin. That's enough. We are merely the pot calling the kettle black. I simply want to know, who is the person behind Tongning? Editor Lin did not respond to Yang Jing's question. Instead, she let out a laugh of ridicule. Yang Jing's heart sank. She picked up her phone and prepared to leave. At this time, Editor Lin finally spoke. Just wait and see. Yang Jing, the situation will change tomorrow. Yang Jing did not look back as she left Editor Lin's home. In reality, she was starting to feel scared. If Editor Lin was speaking the truth, if Tongning really had someone backing her, then with her current situation, what could she do to fight against Tongning? No, let's not scare ourselves first. Let's wait and see what happens tomorrow. Later that night, rumors of Tongning taking drugs spread like wildfire online. It was a hot topic with a lot of clicks. However, thinking about how many times Tongning had slapped them in the face, no one dared to come to a conclusion. Firstly, there was no evidence. Secondly, they were starting to believe in Tongning's character. At 2 a.m., Emoting received a phone call from Lu Che. President, the madam is on the news again. I've already sent someone to investigate. The person taking drugs is Lan Yu. As they look too similar, the madam has been misidentified. Mo Ting pulled out his phone and gently released Tongning from his embrace. He then stood up and walked into the study room. Have you found the evidence? Because there were a lot of people at the time, I have all the evidence. However, it's not in the highest quality. Contact the mainstream media, release the evidence, and change the search rankings. As for the information on school violence that I previously asked you to release, it's time for it to be put to use. However, don't rush into it for now. I want to see which media still wants to make things difficult for Tongning. Lu Che nodded and did not say another word. After a short pause, he added, Also, President, this rumor was spread by Yang Jing. After hearing this, Mo Ting's gaze darkened. He then said in a cold voice, Do you need me to teach you how to deal with someone that refuses to learn? No need. Lu Che understood what Mo Ting was trying to say. Since Yang Jing liked to fight so much, then she wouldn't be able to live the rest of her life in peace. Yang Jing sat in her car and waited the entire night. By the time she woke up, the search rankings had completely changed from Tongning to Lan Yu. Yang Jing turned off her phone in fear as she searched her mind for Editor Lin's warning. Tongning had someone backing her. How could Tongning have someone backing her? This was impossible. Tongning had previously been bullied so badly by her. Even if there was someone backing her, there was no way they would take her seriously. At most, she would be a mistress. Yang Jing put away her phone. Originally, she wanted to go look for Luo Hao, but halfway there, she received a phone call from the hospital. Miss Yang, please come to the hospital to pay the hospital fees for your mother. I already have no money. Who am I supposed to find to pay the fees? Yang Jing yelled. In that case, all you can do is bring your mother home to recover. How was she supposed to take care of a paralyzed child? Above all, if a private matter like this got out, how was she supposed to face the world? Yang Jing had no choice but to turn around and head to the hospital. Meanwhile, the news of Lan Yu taking drugs had already caused an uproar. Even Lan Yu's parents stepped out to clarify, "This can't be my daughter. If it was my daughter, I would immediately kill myself in front of you. Isn't Lan Yu nicknamed Little Tongning? My daughter looks so much like Tongning. How could you guys be so sure that Tongning wasn't the one taking drugs? How could you guys be so sure that it was my daughter?" During an interview, Lan Yu's mother said as she cried, "I know my daughter's temper the best. There's no way she would take drugs. It must have been Tongning. She must have used such a despicable method to frame her. It's not my daughter, it's Tongning." Chapter 141. Seeing Lan Yu's mother crying in the video, even Lan Shi, who was sitting in the office, couldn't help but laugh. From the looks of it, Lan Yu's face had been used as a shield. How dare she use Tongning as a scapegoat? However, in order to refute the rumors, Lan Shi immediately ordered her team to release a statement claiming that the woman was definitely not Tongning. She also asked the netizens to believe Tongning and immediately called the police. As soon as Chung Tian released the statement, Lan Yu's mother tried to commit suicide. She claimed that the evil hands of the entertainment industry were trying to kill her daughter and that the netizens were trying to destroy a child's future. As Tongning was on vacation, after speaking to Lan Shi told her not to make an appearance. So, Tongning put on some casual home clothes as she lay on Emoting's lap and listened to the entertainment news on the TV. Emoting asked Lu Che to bring all the documents home and said he wasn't feeling well and didn't want to go to the office. But Tongning knew, with the chaos outside, Emoting simply didn't want to leave her alone. "Ting, this afternoon, I want to go to the police station," Tongning said as she rested on Emoting's lap. "Okay." Emoting nodded. Emoting nodded his head. There was no need to ask why Tongning was doing this. He knew, when it came to drug abuse, even if the netizens were biased towards her, she still needed to present evidence to prove her innocence. If she missed this opportunity, she would end up being used against in the future. This time, Lan Yu was completely finished. Not only that, Emoting did not tell Tongning. Currently, the hottest topic of discussion online was not the mother fans that supported Lan Yu, but the children of her age. They felt that as a public figure, Lan Yu did not set a good example for her age and was a disgrace to the young people. They even sent a report letter to the National Youth Organization, as well as various complaints and suggestions. As a result of this, Lan Yu's future ban was no longer limited to the entertainment industry, but the entire country. So, Lan Yu's mother's actions did not help her daughter. Instead, harmed her. However, Lan Yu's mother refused to give up. After her suicide attempt, she once again accepted an interview at the hospital. As Lan Yu's mother, I feel very guilty. I wasn't able to protect her and allowed her to suffer such pain. So, I don't have the face to continue living on this earth. As for those demons who won't even spare a 16-year-old child, let's see who the heavens will spare in the end. The reporters surrounded the hospital room to the brim. One of them even moved his microphone closer to Lan Yu's mother and asked, "Madam, are you referring to Tongning when you say demon? Who else could it be?" Lan Yu's mother scoffed as she glared at the camera. "Do you think that Tongning took drugs and framed your daughter? Did you call the police right away?" From what I know, Tongning's management agency, Chung Tian Entertainment, has already called the police. Are you afraid of being investigated by the police? Hearing the word police, Lan Yu's mother froze. She looked a little flustered as she said shamelessly to the reporters, "I don't know anything, don't ask me. All I know is, my daughter has been wrongly accused." After hearing this, the reporters couldn't help but look at each other, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. "Get out of here, all of you, get out. Otherwise, I will kill myself again in front of you." The reporters could sense that Lan Yu's mother was trying to manipulate the public's opinion, but in reality, she was simply trying to deceive herself. After all, Lan Yu's appearance that night was witnessed by a lot of people. So, there was more or less evidence that could be found. As more and more evidence surfaced, as the entire incident became more and more chaotic, and as Lan Yu's mother prepared to commit suicide for a second time to force Tongning and the netizens to confess, one of the parties involved, the Tongning that never interfered with the underworld, finally appeared. Under the protection of her manager, she headed straight to the police station dressed in a simple outfit. She never defended herself, but she could take the most direct action to prove her innocence, and that was to do a urine test for drugs. So, when the reporters once again asked Lan Yu's mother if she knew that Tongning had already taken a drug test and if she was brave enough to take Lan Yu for a drug test, she was completely dumbfounded. Of course, she didn't have the courage to do so. She was well aware of her daughter's personality. She simply wanted to use Tongning to divert attention. But she never expected. Tongning couldn't even be bothered to argue with her and headed straight to the police station. 1 p.m., Tongning released her results to the public. The results were negative, and the doctor concluded that she had no history of drug use. This was Tongning's biggest counterattack against the series of jokes Lan Yu had created. Drug use. What a serious word. As soon as the netizens saw Tongning's results, they were furious. Why did Tongning always have to take the blame for Lan Yu's shameful actions? Was it simply because Tongning looked like her? In an instant, an anti-Lan Yu alliance was formed online. All sorts of fans and passers-by claimed that there was no mini Tongning and there was only one Tongning in the world. They suggested that no one should be Lan Yu's accomplice and bully the tolerant Tongning. Meanwhile, after being slapped across the face by Tongning, Lan Yu's mother could no longer make a sound. However, the reporters' questions became sharp and angry. "Madam, Tongning has already responded to the drug incident. She has been innocent from the beginning." Previously, you were so certain that Tongning had framed another woman. Now that Tongning has presented evidence, what do you think? "Madam, are you trying to use Tongning to divert the public's attention because Lan Yu and Tongning look alike?" "Madam, how has Tongning offended you? Why is she being slandered like this?" "Madam, is it because your daughter is the only person in the world that Tongning deserves to be slandered by you?" Lan Yu's mother sat in bed. She wasn't even 40 years old yet, but because of Lan Yu's incident, she was already mentally and physically exhausted. Especially when faced with the reporter's questions, she could only hug her blanket and cry. "I know, I have wronged Tongning. I know, I just don't want to destroy my daughter." If you don't want to destroy your own daughter, then must you destroy someone else's woman? There is no such logic in this world. Hearing the reporter's sarcasm, Lan Yu's mother moved her lips and finally replied with a choked-up voice, "I was wrong. I didn't teach Lan Yu well, and I have wronged the innocent Tongning. If Tongning was really slandered today, then, if you say you're sorry, how are you going to compensate for her innocence? Most importantly, where was Lan Yu at the time?" Chapter 142. After the drug incident broke out, Lan Yu hid at her friend's house, too afraid to leave. Especially after seeing her mother take the blame for her, she felt a little guilty. But she had no idea the incident would continue to grow. In the morning, the drug incident was revealed, and in the afternoon, the media revealed that Lan Yu had been involved in school violence. At the age of 14, she had instigated others to gang up on a female classmate until her left leg was crippled. Afterwards, she changed her name and moved to Beijing. As soon as the news broke, everyone was shocked. They never thought a 14-year-old child could be this bad. Above all, the police quickly confirmed that the drug user was Lan Yu. Not only that, the police also found out that Lan Yu's parents were afraid that she would be punished for her school violence, so they changed her age by 2 years. In reality, when she committed the school violence, she was already 16 years old. Now, she had just turned 18 years old. In an instant, Lan Yu's name became infamous in Beijing. Not only that, the The police also began to look for her everywhere. Seeing this explosive news, Lan Yu began to panic. She paced back and forth at her friend's house in fear. She no longer had anyone to rely on and no one to turn to. What else could she do? Her friend was also a model. She had met Lan Yu during the new talent competition. After seeing Lan Yu's disgusting actions on the news, she immediately threw Lan Yu's belongings in front of her. You should leave, Lan Yu. You are too shocking. I can't believe I helped you smear Tongning's name. I never thought you would slap me so hard. Lan Yu had nowhere to go. Seeing that her friend was no longer going to help her, she immediately knelt on the floor and begged, Xiaoya, I beg you, don't chase me away. If I go out now, I will definitely die. The reporters and police will not let me go. After hearing Lan Yu's words, her friend sneered and pulled out her phone to call the police. I must be blind to have become friends with you. If you don't leave, then wait for the police to come knocking. Seeing that her friend was about to call the police, Lan Yu immediately jumped up and tried to grab the phone. The man noticed her actions and pushed her forcefully. Lan Yu stumbled and fell to the ground. However, her face brushed past the sharp edge of the coffee table and a trail of blood immediately appeared on the left side of her face. Lan Yu touched her left cheek and almost fainted from the pain. However, her friend did not stop making phone calls. Not only that, she even called an ambulance. Afterwards, she said to Lan Yu, in a moment, when the police arrive, I will tell them everything that happened to your cheek. I'm not like you. After speaking, she pulled out a first aid kit to help Lan Yu stop the bleeding. Luo Hao looked at her without saying anything to comfort her. He simply handed her a tissue. I can't win against Tongning. I admit defeat, Yang Jing said as she sobbed. I have decided to leave Beijing. I can't afford to mess around. All I can do is hide. It's not that bad. It's that bad, Luo Hao. Yang Jing wiped away her tears as she lifted her head and looked at Luo Hao in seriousness. To prevent President Lan from kicking you out of Chengtian, you need to suppress Zhehao and Tongning. Otherwise, once Lan she develops someone else, she will mercilessly kick you out. What I want to tell you is, Tongning has someone backing her. Luo Hao froze in shock. This is what Editor Lin told me. As it turns out, she was right. I really don't want to throw my life away. The other party has obviously been angered by me. You may be able to use this information. Of course, no matter who the person backing Tongning is, she is definitely not single. I'll leave this secret with you. You've helped me so many times. It's time for me to return the favor. After hearing this, Luo Hao pulled out a gold card from his bag and handed it to Yang Jing. No matter where you go, you need to have money to protect yourself. Yang Jing looked at Luo Hao as tears began to flow from her eyes. What's the point of fighting to the death? In the end, you still ended up with nothing. I hope this information is useful to you. Chapter 143. Luo Hao had a complicated expression on his face. Especially after seeing Yang Jing lose like this, there was an indescribable feeling in his heart. In the end, his throat moved, but no words came out. After Yang Jing calmed down, he finally asked, Where are you going? I'll take you there. No need. Yang Jing shook her head. Luo Hao, all these years, although I've done a lot of bad things behind your back, it all started from the moment you forced me to abort the child. So, I've never felt like I owe you anything. After speaking, Yang Jing pushed open the car door and quickly disappeared. Leaving Luo Hao behind, his heart was in a mess. Child, yes, the problem was with the child. But this was the entertainment industry. Did she want to end up like in Zhehao and Yunexian? In the dark, Luo Hao revealed a cold smile. If he hadn't helped Yang Jing behind the scenes all these years, with her arrogant personality, would she have the status she had today? He couldn't deny that he still had feelings for Yang Jing, but he would never turn back. Right now, Chengtian's power was evenly divided. He had Hua Yuan, and Zhehao had Tongning and Li Danny, who originally belonged to Yang Jing, was temporarily under the control of the vice president. It seemed the battle for the best resources was about to begin. Did Tongning have someone backing her? Who didn't have someone backing them? If the person backing Tongning was really that strong, Tongning wouldn't be in her current position a long time ago. So, he didn't think the information Yang Jing revealed would be of much use. To put it simply, during the confrontation between Lan Yu and Tongning, Tongning simply moved her fingers and did not say a word. She simply pulled out a urine test report and dealt with Lan Yu in a clean and efficient manner. She also maintained her level of exposure. This Tongning was indeed a strong opponent. Because of the incident with Lan Yu, Tongning's reputation once again improved, and she received more and more invitations from A-list agencies. Among them, there was no lack of big-name endorsements. So, within Zaheo's arrangements, Tongning's schedule became even more packed. Apart from these 3 days of vacation, she would be busy for the rest of the month. The night before heading to Moscow to film her vision, and Zaheo gave Tongning a phone call. "Tomorrow, I need to go to Chengtian for a short meeting to confirm your schedule. You have a 1 p.m. flight to Moscow. Are you sure you won't be going the same way as me? What if something happens?" Tongning was in the middle of packing her and Mo Ting's luggage. She turned her head to look at the man's busy profile and smiled. "I can handle it. If there's a problem this time, then in the future, you'll have to listen to me for all public arrangements. How about it?" "There won't be a problem," Tongning said with certainty. "Remember what you said yourself." Compared to other artists, Tongning's self-discipline was reassuring. So, Zaheo did not force her. After all, Tongning had been in the industry for 8 to 9 years and was well aware of the intricacies. After Tongning hung up the phone, Mo Ting put down the documents in his hands and approached her from behind. Inhaling the fragrance on her body, he stretched out his arms and hugged her. "I haven't showered yet." Tongning struggled. "I don't mind," Mo Ting replied in a deep voice. He then reached out his hand and gently stroked her soft hair. "I've seen the work Zaheo has done for you. It will definitely help you on the rise. From what I can see, he has already started to control his fans and has an experienced team. Our Tongning is finally no longer the wild child that no one cares about." Tongning turned her head and looked into his obsidian eyes. She let out a gentle laugh. "Does that mean Big Boss can stop worrying?" Mo Ting lowered his head and placed his chin on her shoulder. "When it comes to you, I will never be able to stop worrying. That's why you accompanied me to Moscow for a magazine cover shoot despite being so tired." Tongning felt her heart ache as she touched Mo Ting's face. "It's snowing over there. Bring a few extra layers of thick clothing," Mo Ting smiled. He did not care about the word tired. It all depended on who he was with. On the television, the entertainment news was following up on Lan Yu's disfigurement and drug charges. At the same time, Lan Yu's mother was taken to the police station for investigation for helping Lan Yu change her age. The netizens were filled with emotions. A young girl in the prime of her life had actually done something so outrageous. Since she was disfigured, she no longer deserved to be called Tongning. However, on the television, no one mentioned anything about Yang Jing. After all, she was only an ex-manager of Chengtian. Even if she no longer worked as a manager, she could still change careers. But Mo Ting's most recent order to Liu Che was this morning. He instructed him to use the smallest possible method to notify the relevant industries. As long as Hai Rui was involved, they could not accept Yang Jing and prevent her from taking even half a step into the entertainment industry. Without a high salary and benefits, he wanted to see how Yang Jing could still be so vicious and arrogant. The next morning, Zaheo picked Tongning up for a meeting at Chengtian Entertainment. Just as they were about to enter the meeting room, they heard a clear voice, "Tongning." Tongning lifted her head to find a light blue silhouette walking towards her. As a model, she was naturally tall, but she didn't have long legs like Tongning. However, her facial features were well-defined and had a hint of foreign charm to her. Her eyes were a little blue. This was Li Danny. From the way she walked, it wasn't easy to tell what she was like. But, from the way she spoke, she sounded quite friendly. "Hello." Tongning nodded her head. "Are you here for the meeting?" Tongning was a little overwhelmed by the woman's familiarity. "Good luck then. I've seen your runway shows. You're really good." Tongning smiled without responding. At this time, Zaheo pushed open the office door and said to Tongning, "Let's go. We're running out of time." Li Danny watched as Tongning entered the meeting room with a thoughtful look. At this time, Her assistant scoffed in mockery. She's just an A-grade model, yet she doesn't know her place. Out of all the models in Changtian, only Hua Yuan doesn't need to bow down to you. Who does Tongning think she is? Don't speak nonsense, Li Danny gently scolded her assistant. Yang Jie's resignation was obviously a trap set up by Tongning and Zaheo and President Lan. The current vice president is nothing but an empty position. She won't receive any good resources. She caused us to lose Yang Jie. Li Danny didn't respond. Didn't Tongning have to go to Moscow for a magazine shoot? She was familiar with the photography team used by her vision. They had previously helped her shoot a blockbuster. When Tongning saw her, she didn't need to bow down to her. But she wasn't going to let Yang Jing's incident go so easily. Above all, in the past, she and Hua Yuan were fighting for resources. Now, with Tongning's involvement, why would she need to use the best manager? Who did she think she was? Who did she think she was? Since we're already overseas, why can't we just be honest with each other? It was snowing lightly in Moscow, and Tongning was afraid of the cold. Even though Imo Ting was fully prepared, she was still freezing. So, she hugged herself tightly and rubbed her palms together. Because of this action, Imo Ting saw it from behind and felt his heart ache. He immediately took off his coat and draped it over Tongning from behind. He then wrapped her in his embrace and carried her forward. Everything happened so quickly that Zaheo had no time to react. Who was that man just now? Who was the man with the domineering aura? Too bad he didn't get to see his face. And Zaheo realized he was a little nervous. Ting, I know what you want to say, but I can't bear to see you in the cold. Imo Ting carried Tongning as he sped towards the Lincoln limousine at Dynasty Hotel. His own artist was being held hostage. How could Zaheo not follow closely behind? He and Long Jie walked side by side. As it was too cold, neither of them said a word. After all, they had already gotten to this point. Was there a need to worry about not seeing the person in person? Chapter 145. As they arrived at Dynasty Hotel, all they heard was the sound of a door closing. And Zaheo and Long Jie had been locked outside by Imo Ting. All Zaheo could see was Imo Ting's back. Tongning was 178 centimeters tall, the standard figure of an international model. If she wore a pair of high heels, she would be 185 centimeters tall. A normal man standing next to her would be asking to be humiliated. Even Zaheo, who was 187 centimeters tall, didn't look much different when standing next to Tongning. But this man, when he wrapped his arms around Tongning, he could actually make Tongning look like a little bird in front of him. Not only was his figure noticeable, but his aura was also noticeable. His inviolable dignity, unchallengeable strength, and unapproachable danger gave Zaheo a sense of security. This man was definitely not an ordinary man. And Zaheo was a little surprised as he turned around and looked at Long Jie. He rolled his eyes. I'm sure you already knew who this man was, right? With the heating in the hotel, Long Jie no longer had to hide under her down jacket. So, she peeked her eyes out and replied, Of course. I've been by Tongning's side for 3 years. If you were a little more attentive to Tongning, he wouldn't need to come along. Are you saying he came because he was worried about Tongning? Of course, he's so busy. Every time he comes out, he has to finish his work a few days in advance. Long Jie naturally rolled her eyes at Zaheo. You saw it for yourself just now. He would rather freeze himself than let Tongning be exposed to the cold. If you were in his shoes, would you be able to do that? And Zaheo had always thought the man behind Tongning wasn't someone that could be seen in public. Even if he was, he wouldn't be a big shot. But after everything that had just happened, he had changed his mind. To be exact, he was a big shot. But whether or not he could be seen in public, he wasn't sure. Let's go to the hotel we booked. And Zaheo smiled. The shoot had been prepared for 2 days. He refused to believe that he wouldn't be able to see Tongning in person. In reality, as soon as the two left Dynasty, they realized the hotel they booked was right opposite Dynasty. If they wanted to see Tongning, all they had to do was make a phone call and no one would get suspicious. And Zaheo stood by the window and looked at the magnificent building opposite him. He thought to himself, this man seems very capable. He is able to take everything into consideration for Tongning. Snow continued to fall on the streets of Moscow. From the moment they stepped into the room, Ting turned the heater to the maximum and removed his jacket. He then placed Tongning's hands on his burning hot chest. Tongning struggled for a moment and shook her head. My hands are too cold. You will catch a cold. Then let's take a hot bath. Ting pulled her into the bathroom and filled the tub with hot water. So, why did Tongning have to be treated in such a manner? Who wouldn't feel cold in a day like this? But, wasn't Zaheo's request really too much? All he asked was for them to do their best to keep warm. Was that too much? The magazine was only going to shoot for one issue. After the shoot, the filming team's job would be done. But for Tongning, if she was to get hurt from the cold, not only would her body suffer, her follow-up work would also be delayed. So, Zaheo had to ensure Tongning's safety. The next morning, Zaheo woke up early and went to check out the location with the filming team. After confirming that it was within Tongning's acceptable range, he finally returned to the hotel. 9 a.m., Zaheo gave Tongning a phone call and told her to get ready as the shoot would start at 10 a.m. Ting looked out the window at the weather and patted Tongning on the head with a pained expression. Don't worry, I've been in a cold pool for an entire day in the past. I can handle a cold like this. I'll drive you there. It's best if you don't go. I'm afraid you'll get angry. Tongning stopped Ting. Trust me, I'm not as weak as you think I am. This is something I have to experience. It's my job. Ting did not say another word as he leaned against the desk in the room. He did not stop Tongning, but he did not allow her to stop him either. Even though he knew he would be angry and hurt if he saw her like this, he still followed behind Tongning's van. Chapter 146. 9:30 a.m. The entire filming crew arrived at the location. It was a jungle with tall trees, but all that was left were dark brown leaves. It gave off a desolate vibe. Snow covered the surroundings, and not far away, there was a frozen lake. However, from afar, one could see the unique style of Moscow's buildings. The colorful buildings made one feel better, and the weather was not as cold as it used to be. The filming crew set up a makeshift room for Tongning. But, as soon as Long Jie received the costume prepared by the sponsor, she immediately approached Zaheo and the photographer. Aren't we shooting a promotional video for the costume? In a seaside city with bone-chilling sea winds and -3 degrees below zero, how can we expect Tongning to wear a strapless gown? This season's shoot is called Snow and Ice. Not only will Tongning have to wear a thin dress, she will also have to walk barefoot across the frozen lake. The photographer yelled at Long Jie. How many models have to do this? Only your family's model has so many things to do. I wonder if she's a professional model. As a model, when it came to clothing promotions, they would usually shoot an out-of-season shoot. In other words, they would wear a summer outfit in winter and a winter outfit in summer. This was especially true during Fashion Week. But her vision was only shooting for the front cover. In a situation like this, the sponsor would not make any special requests for the model. So, the photographer was in control. This is purely for the effect of the shoot. If your model feels she can't do it, she can give her vision a call. Long Jie was speechless. All she could do was look at Zaheo. Of course, Zaheo didn't look too happy either. His eyes were dark and filled with suspicion. If I find out you've been bribed by someone to deliberately mess with Tongning, I will make it impossible for you to survive in the photography industry. Hearing Zaheo's warning, the photographer's expression turned a little unnatural. But he still maintained his composure. Don't slander me. I've been a photographer for so many years. I've never met a model that's more difficult to deal with than Tongning. If you want to shoot, then do it. If not, then leave. Of course I want to shoot. Tongning's voice emerged from behind them. Tongning. Zaheo reached out his hand to stop her, but she quickly pushed him away. But, I want to ask, how long have you been in the industry? 7 years. The photographer scoffed. But I've been a model for 9 years. Tongning endured the cold and smiled. In this industry, I have seen all kinds of dirty tricks and even life-threatening situations. Are you saying I am the most difficult model to deal with? I don't really believe it, but I understand the logic behind it. If you say that this is the best choice, I can believe you. But please remember, I'm not someone who easily causes trouble, but I'm someone who will definitely take revenge. Since we can't understand each other, we can only go by the book. Whatever you say, will do. Tongning had always been cold, but when she said these words, she glared at the man with a bone-piercing coldness. As soon as the man saw the expression on Tongning's face, the overbearing aura he had a moment ago completely disappeared. After 9 years of hard work, she had met all kinds of people. Did they think that she was a newbie and could be easily fooled? The most difficult model to deal with? This photographer was just finding an excuse to provoke her. Long Jie, give me my clothes. Tongning. Long Jie hesitated. Tongning grabbed the clothes and looked at Long Jie with a comforting smile. The weather was already so cold. If they continued to waste time, they would just continue to be exposed to the cold wind. Emoting's car was parked not too far away. Seeing the argument, he immediately gave Long Jie a phone call. While Tongning was getting her makeup done, Long Jie found Emoting and boarded his car. What happened? Long Jie had a worried expression on her face as she explained the entire situation in detail. She even put in a few good words for Zaheo, just in case the boss got angry and decided to vent his anger on everyone. And Zaheo is actually a pretty good manager. He arrived early this morning to check on the filming environment. Tell Tongning not to take the shoot. Tell her it was my idea. Long Jie got out of the car and relayed Emoting's words to Tongning. However, Tongning asked Long Jie to ask Emoting, "You want me to run away willfully?" She was a model, so she had to listen to arrangements. This was understandable. If she left like this, the consequences would not be something she could control. Even if someone wanted to frame her, she still had to grit her teeth and get through it. Most importantly, Emoting was here. She could enjoy his warmth, but it wasn't an excuse to run away from her responsibilities. What if Emoting was never by her side? After receiving her answer, Emoting gave Tongning a phone call and simply said, "You can continue filming, but after you finish, the entire team will lose their jobs." Emoting was angry. From his tone, Tongning could tell that Emoting had never been harsh towards her. He only acted like the Emoting that everyone was familiar with. "Don't worry, I know what I'm doing." Tongning put down her phone. At this time, Zaheo, who was standing behind her, saw the caller ID, 0819. It turned out, this man was simply a number on Tongning's phone. Of course, he had no idea 0819 was Tongning and Emoting's wedding anniversary. What's wrong? Is he worried? Worried? Tongning nodded. Tongning nodded her head as a helpless smile appeared on her face. I really hope he's not nearby. Otherwise, after I get changed and leave, he might be so angry that he might kill someone. Since that's the case, why hasn't he stepped out to protect you? And Zaheo looked at her suspiciously. He's already protected me enough. But this is my career. I can rely on myself. And Zaheo did not say anything else. Perhaps he had underestimated Tongning and the man beside her. From the time he first came into contact with Tongning, all he knew was that this woman was self-disciplined, planned, and ambitious, but she also had her own bottom line. She didn't make the first move, but she wasn't weak either. In fact, every move she made was deadly and vengeful. But the reality was, she was so pure that she didn't want to rely on external forces to achieve her goals. From the looks of it, the public's assumptions about her were all wrong. Since you've put it this way, I don't think there's any reason for me to stop you. And Zaheo smiled. Go out. I'm going to get changed. And Zaheo nodded his head and left the changing room. Meanwhile, Tongning gathered her courage and put on the champagne-colored strapless dress. It was cold, so cold that it was bone-piercing. But Tongning still held onto her dress and walked out of the changing room. Afterwards, under the photographer's request, she walked barefoot onto the frozen lake. The photographer sneered from behind the camera. He wanted to see if Tongning could last 5 minutes in such harsh weather. Chapter 147. The cold wind howled as it rustled through the trees. It felt like it was mixed with ice as it hit one's face, sending a bone-piercing chill down one's spine. The photographer held onto a glass of water while his assistant and staff held onto hand warmers. Everyone looked at Tongning like they were about to watch a good show. Normally, when a photographer was about to teach a model a lesson, it was always going to be a great show. Before Tongning started filming, she lowered her head and whispered something into Zaheo's ear. Afterwards, she followed Long Jie to the designated location. Long Jie looked down at her feet as her expression changed. The ice on the surface of this lake isn't sturdy at all. If you stay on it for too long, it will crack. After hearing Long Jie's yell, the photographer roared, "I've already said it before. If you want to film, then film. If you don't, then leave." You. Long Jie pointed at the photographer. The anger in her chest was about to burst out. Forget it. Tongning's expression remained the same, telling Long Jie not to get angry. However, no one noticed the deep fire in her clear eyes. But you are in danger. I know what I'm doing. Seeing Tongning compromise, the photographer's lips curved into a mocking smile. At least she was smart enough to know that the photographer couldn't be offended. All day long, she thought she was a supermodel and went around putting on airs. He wanted Tongning to know she was nothing. Here, Tongning, get ready. Let's start filming from the distance. And Zaheo held onto his phone as he looked at the photographer. He had asked Tongning to stand barefoot on the surface of the lake while he stood on the shore to film. What kind of photographer worked like this? And Zaheo looked at the trembling Tongning, who still had a stubborn smile on his face. He subconsciously moved forward as he said to the photographer, "We're not filming anymore. Managerin, do you know what you're saying?" The photographer immediately turned around and questioned Zaheo. "You need to be clear. If Tongning leaves now, does she still want to keep her professional image? Isn't she just standing on the ice? I haven't even asked her to jump yet." "You want her to jump?" Long Jie shrieked in disbelief. "What? Isn't jumping a normal action when taking photos?" The photographer put down his camera and laughed arrogantly. "The ice is about to crack. Isn't it still intact?" Hearing this, Tongning suddenly lifted her feet and said to Long Jie, "Long Jie, get me some clothes and shoes." Long Jie reacted for a moment and immediately rushed into the changing room to retrieve Tongning's clothes. However, someone had soaked her clothes and they had already frozen into a block of ice. Tongning did not wait for a change of clothes. Instead, she walked away from the ice with her head held high, completely ignoring the photographer. "Tongning, do you still want to be a model? Are you tired of living?" Seeing that Tongning had really gone on strike, the photographer suddenly panicked. Originally, he simply wanted to mess with Tongning because he knew her vision shoot was extremely important to Tongning's career. He was confident that Tongning would endure it, but he never expected, even though Tongning could endure it, she wouldn't be like steamed bun, enduring everything. Tongning left the lake and approached the staff. Even though she was only wearing a thin dress, her chin was still raised high. This was the Tongning that refused to admit defeat. "Am I tired of living, or are you the one tired of living?" Tongning took the phone from Zaheo's hand and showed the cameraman the footage she had just recorded. "I don't know who your financial backer is, and I don't want to know. But if this video is leaked, do you think your team will be kicked out of the photography industry?" "We didn't do anything to you," the photographer said angrily. "We'll know once we send it out and let everyone judge for themselves." "Tongning, have you made a mistake? You should be the one begging us, not the other way around." "I never beg others. I only beg myself." After speaking, Tongning placed her gaze on Long Jie. However, Long Jie replied angrily, "Her clothes have already frozen. There's no way she can wear them." And Zaheo removed his jacket. Just as he was about to help Tongning put it on, Tongning turned to look at the photographer. Seeing his face turn green and red, she walked towards him barefoot. "I have no grudges with you. Must you go this far? How would I know what's going on? Don't you know?" Tongning's gaze was extremely cold, sending shivers down everyone's spines. Perhaps the photographer had been forced into a corner, so he pushed Tongning aside and said arrogantly, "Who do you think you are, Tongning? You're just an old model. Did you think I don't need you? Let me tell you, Tongning, with your attitude, I bet you will never be able to become a supermodel. Hearing this, not only Tongning, but Zaheo and Long Jie were also angered. However, Long Jie did not forget to find something warm for Tongning. Just as Zaheo was about to pull Tongning behind him and teach the photographer a lesson, a black windbreaker suddenly appeared on Tongning's body. A moment later, everyone looked at the man that had appeared in front of them in surprise. It was Imo Ting. It was the CEO of Hai Rue Entertainment, Imo Ting. His car was parked behind them, but no one had seen when he had appeared. It really was Imo Ting. Everyone thought their eyes were playing tricks on them, including Zaheo. Meanwhile, Long Jie knew her savior had appeared, so she immediately took off her shoes and asked Tongning to put them back on. She then found a place to sit down and wait for the show to start. Everyone was shocked. They couldn't understand why they would run into Imo Ting at a place like this. Imo. President Imo? The photographer anxiously tried to confirm Imo Ting's identity, but Imo Ting completely ignored him. Not only did he wrap the windbreaker around Tongning, he also wrapped a scarf tightly around her face. And Zaheo looked at Imo Ting from the side and suddenly understood. This back, this familiar back, this back that he had been following the entire time, Tongning's man, the man that Tongning was trying to hide, was actually the CEO of Hai Rue, Imo Ting. And Zaheo was no less surprised than the other staff. He had never expected Tongning to have a background like this. Who would have expected a protective umbrella like this? The model that had been slandered the entire time was actually the woman of the CEO of Hai Rue. Afterwards, Zaheo calmed down. This was in line with Tongning's personality. If she wanted something, she didn't like to rely on others. She wanted to take things one step at a time. This was probably the main reason why she hid her relationship with Imo Ting from the public. After all, if their relationship was revealed to the public, she would no longer be known as the model, but as Imo Ting's girlfriend. But did Imo Ting think she was just playing around? Or was he serious? Everyone could tell that Imo Ting was going to stand up for Tongning today. Of course, the photographer was well aware that the man was the CEO of Hai Rue. If he resisted, then it was very likely that he would face unemployment from this moment on. Therefore, he could only bury his head and compromise. Everyone watched as the photographer stripped off his clothes, leaving only a pair of boxers on his lower body. He didn't even dare to wear socks as he braved the cold wind and walked towards the icy lake. However, a moment later, the photographer was so cold that he wanted to jump back onto the shore. But, Imo Ting asked, "You haven't even started taking photos yet." The photographer froze in place. Even though the soles of his feet were bone-chilling, he still did not have the courage to jump onto the shore. At this time, Imo Ting suddenly asked without looking at anyone, "Who wet Tongning's clothes?" Everyone at the scene trembled as the stylists looked at each other. In the end, they all pointed out the culprit. A fashionable woman in her early 30s lowered her head in fear. But Imo Ting had no intention of letting her off the hook. So, he said to everyone present, "Pour all the water in your hands on her body. Otherwise, you will have to bear the consequences." These were all people that had bullied and mocked Tongning in the past. Did they think he would let them off? If he hadn't personally witnessed the humiliation that Tongning had suffered, he would have let her endure it. But, since he had encountered her, he was going to clean her up. The staff hesitated, but they were afraid of Hai Rue's anger. So, they all approached the stylist and poured the hot water in their cups on the woman. "Sorry, we were forced to do this. Sorry." The woman's eyes turned red, but she did not dare to cry out loud. Meanwhile, the photographer on the ice was feeling a little uncomfortable. Originally, he wanted to jump a little to warm himself up, but all he heard was a cracking sound as the ice actually split open and the photographer fell into the water. In an instant, he almost fainted from the cold. The staff quickly scooped him up and wrapped him in a down jacket. But even with this, his body was still turning purple from the cold. Seeing the photographer on the verge of death, Imo Ting was finally satisfied. He stood up and said to everyone, "I've said it before, I can't stand people that use dirty methods. Do you think a mere photographer can stir up a storm? Do you really think you have the ability? From now on, if any magazine dares to hire you, I will make them close down. Also, today's incident was a coincidence. Tongning is a friend that I can get along with. I don't like strange rumors going around. You guys better watch your mouths. After speaking, Ting stood up with Tongning and glanced at the surrounding staff with a warning look in his eyes. It wasn't until they looked away guiltily that Ting and Tongning turned to leave. And Zaheo followed behind Longjia and followed closely behind Tongning and Ting. Photographer, are you okay? Seeing the photographer's body turning purple, one of the staff immediately called an ambulance. The photographer looked at their backs and was speechless. He was so regretful that his intestines turned green. Who would have thought Ting was exactly like the rumors said? When it came to killing people, he was swift and ruthless. Li Danny, you've caused my death this time. Before the photographer fainted, he thought to himself, Tongning had such a strong backing, yet you asked me to act recklessly? On the way home, Zaheo drove while Tongning and Ting sat in the back seat. Zaheo looked at Ting through the rearview mirror and thought to himself, the man a moment ago was indeed the ruthless CEO of Hai Rue. However, he never imagined, in private, Ting and Tongning interacted in such a way. Chapter 149. The fierceness between Ting's brows had long disappeared. All that remained was worry and helplessness. He wrapped Tongning's feet in his unbuttoned shirt and rubbed her palms until her limbs were warm again. Only then did he gently let go of her feet and looked at her with a deep gaze. I'm fine, Tongning quickly replied. Afraid Ting wouldn't believe her, she emphasized, really? Seeing Ting did not respond, she continued to explain, I am an A-grade model. You should know better than anyone that I am not a kind person. I didn't get to where I am today by enduring. I know what I am doing. So, can you not be so worried? Ting remained silent. He simply turned his gaze and stared at Zaheo through the rearview mirror. Zaheo had to admit, out of all the people he had come into contact with, not a single man had a sharper expression than Ting. In front of Tongning, he could be gentle, but in front of outsiders, he had to be the ruler. He was the king. Up until this moment, Zaheo still couldn't believe this man was the man behind Tongning. I will call her Vision and ask them to send a new photography team over. Zaheo quickly said, use our own photography team. As for the money, I will pay. Her Vision only has one team left, and they have already been eliminated. Ting said coldly, I remember Changtian has a photography team called Fearless. Although they are part of Changtian, they have been following Li Danny and Hua Yuan around all these years. The agency has long acknowledged them as their private photography team. Zaheo explained. From Ting's words, it seemed he wanted to fight with Li Danny and Hua Yuan for a photography team. Plus, President Changtian is someone else's agency. You know Changtian better than anyone else. What's going on? Contact them. Ting's voice was cold. If you dare to make moves behind someone's back, then you should know what it means to pay the price. Zaheo's expression froze. Could it be that Ting already knew who the rich man behind the photographer was? However, Ting's words reminded Zaheo that Tongning was now a part of Changtian and was being heavily nurtured. She naturally had the right to enjoy the best resources. Plus, from what he knew, Li Danny did not have any activities recently. In other words, the team was currently resting. Since they were Changtian's resources, what would happen if he used them? Tongning felt a little helpless. Ting would rather talk to Zaheo than turn to look at her. She knew Ting was truly angry, but there were too many people in the car, so she did not say much. After returning to Dynasty Hotel, Tongning wrapped her arms around Ting from behind. She wanted to explain everything to him, but Ting suddenly received a phone call from Lu Che. Not long after, he grabbed his jacket and left the house. On the table was a note he left for a business partner. Zaheo and Longjia returned to the hotel opposite. However, As they neared their rooms, they stopped in their tracks. It was obvious they wanted to say something. Seeing in Zaheo's expression, Long Jie couldn't help but let out a gentle laugh. She placed her hands behind her back and raised an eyebrow. If you have any questions, ask away. I want to know, is President Imo married? Is his relationship with Tongning serious, or is it just a game? Yes, Long Jie replied casually. Then, Tongning is still with him. In that case, listen carefully. The person he is married to is Tongning. They are husband and wife. Long Jie rolled her eyes. When I first found out, I was even more surprised than you. I thought Tongning was trying to get back at her jerk ex by marrying an old man. It was only later that I found out the man she married was Big Boss. But Tongning doesn't want to reveal it to the public. So, they are keeping their marriage a secret. When Zaheo heard this answer, he let out a soft laugh. How much more did Tongning hide from him? And Zaheo, it hasn't been easy for Tongning to get to where she is today. She has relied on her own hard work to get to where she is today. Although she is Big Boss's wife, she is also a professional model. So, I hope you can treat her the same as before. And Zaheo glanced at Long Jie and realized she really understood Tongning. I will keep this matter to myself. And Zaheo had no intention of giving Tongning special treatment. If Tongning was someone that was eager for quick success, she would have plenty of ways to succeed. There was no need for her to fight like this. But the reality was, Tongning was herself. Even though she was married to Imo Ting, she still had her own light. But the fact that Tongning's husband was Imo Ting was still a surprise. Did you think she had a man living off a woman? In the end, she ended up marrying the most powerful man in the entertainment industry. Jane. Straight. No. Dare. Believe. Yes. And Zaheo felt like his face was swollen from being slapped by Tongning. Of course, this wasn't the first time he had been slapped in the face by Tongning. Because of the incident with the photography team, her vision shoot was temporarily put on hold. Tongning didn't know how Imo Ting communicated with her vision, but at least, news of Imo Ting dealing with the photographer had not reached Beijing. In fact, no one had even heard of it. This had always been Imo Ting's way of doing things. If he wanted to do something, there was nothing he couldn't do. Tongning sighed as she continued to wait for Imo Ting. It wasn't until late at night that Imo Ting finally returned to the hotel. As soon as he lifted his head, he saw Tongning standing on the balcony in her thin clothes. He immediately grabbed a blanket and wrapped it around Tongning. Are you trying to anger me to death? Huh. Chapter 150. And Zaheo had been waiting for Lan Shi's phone call. He had already mobilized Chang Tian's photography team and obtained her vision support and assistance to help Tongning complete her November magazine shoot as soon as possible. Logically speaking, with the incident between her vision and the model, the news would have already been all over the internet. But Editor Lin and Zaheo had a tacit understanding. Because Zaheo was caught in the middle, her vision had no choice but to listen to Zaheo's arrangements. Not to mention, this time, it was her vision's photographer who deliberately messed with Tongning. Late at night, Lan Shi finally received a phone call. However, the first thing she said was to question Zaheo. Why didn't you discuss this with me first before using the company's photography team? And Zaheo froze for a moment as the smile on his face quickly disappeared. In a serious tone, he replied, because her vision made things difficult for Tongning, and she had a falling out with the photographer. Zaheo, you know Fearless has always been used by Li Danny. Can you imagine how awkward I felt when Li Danny asked me about it? Lan Shi asked as she suppressed her anger. Because time was tight, I thought. No matter how tight time is, the company's rules and regulations cannot be thrown away. I'll let it go this time, but I hope there won't be a next time, Lan Shi warned. And Zaheo was silent for a few seconds before he suddenly said, Lan Shi, I suddenly don't understand you. Lan Shi realized her attitude was too bad, so she quickly tried to comfort him. If you were in my position, you would know how difficult it is for me. And Zaheo sneered and did not say another word. And Zaheo could clearly sense the change in Lan Shi. So, that night, he did not rest at all as he carefully studied the relationship between Tongning and Imo Ting. as well as Tongning's journey to where she was today. It seemed, Tongning's change began from the Crown Star fashion show. From then on, it wasn't hard to tell that Ting had more or less become involved in Tongning's career. Firstly, on the day of the Crown Star fashion show, Tongning's identity was exposed. Secondly, at the Bright Night show, they took a photo together. Thirdly, Han Ruoxue slandered Tongning for using Ting to create hype, and Hai Rui released a statement to slap Tongning in the face. Lastly, during the bed climbing incident, Hai Rui's artist director spoke up for Tongning. He even said Ting didn't care about Tongning. In reality, Ting had already done a lot behind the scenes. Looking back at Tongning's journey into Chengtian, when Lan Shi first heard Tongning wanted to sign with Creative Entertainment, she did not insist. Afterwards, the only reason she signed Tongning was because of Yang Jing and Luo Hao's provocation. Now that no one dared to challenge her authority as CEO, she began to be cautious and wary of Tongning. The only reason he had returned was to restrain Luo Hao. He and Lan Shi had fought side by side for many years. Although he understood that it wasn't easy for a woman like Lan Shi to manage such a big entertainment company, being played around like a chess piece was not a pleasant feeling. Today, he had only used a photography team. If things got a little bigger, how would Lan Shi react? He couldn't imagine it. The next morning, Zaheo was just about to head to the airport to pick up the photography team and her visions manager. However, Ting asked Long Jie to tell him to wait in the hotel lobby. And Zaheo made some time to sit down in the hotel's luxurious lobby. Not long after, he saw Ting sitting opposite him dressed in a black trench coat. And Zaheo didn't understand Ting's intention, so he waited for him to speak. After removing his leather gloves, Ting leaned back on the sofa with an imposing aura. I'm sure you are well aware of my relationship with Tongning, but it is time for you to make a decision. I don't quite understand. You don't understand? Ting looked into Zaheo's eyes and said coldly, Chengtian is merely Tongning's stepping stone. As for what Lan Shi sees Tongning, I think you are well aware. Ting wanted Zaheo to make a choice between Lan Shi and Tongning. If he wholeheartedly supported Tongning, then his relationship with Lan Shi was bound to go to a dead end. After all, when a manager's heart wasn't with the agency, it would be the agency's biggest problem. Plus, Zaheo wasn't Long Jie. Between men, they were more meticulous. So, Ting needed to be careful. But, even though Lan Shi wasn't the same Lan Shi from before, their relationship was still there. So, it was impossible for Zaheo to betray Lan Shi all of a sudden. Give me some time to think about it. Up to you. Ting knew, the more Zaheo hesitated, the higher his expectations of Lan Shi would be and the greater his disappointment would be. Does Tongning know about this? What do you think? Ting asked Zaheo. Zaheo couldn't help but laugh. Tongning has always been the most clear-headed, regardless of everything, and Zaheo's biggest wish was for Tongning to become a supermodel. As for his conflict with Lan Shi, it could wait for now. So, her vision shoot went relatively smoothly. However, Li Danny had asked her more than once about Lan Shi. President Lan, Tongning borrowed my team. Does she not plan to return it? Danny, you should know that this team belongs to the agency. So, it's understandable that Zaheo used it, Lan Shi explained. I understand. Li Danny sneered as she angrily stormed out of Lan Shi's office. She already knew about the incident with her visions photographer. However, he didn't dare to say anything about Ting. So, Li Danny simply assumed that Tongning had replaced her own photography team. But, so what if the shoot was successful? It would only count if it was successfully released on the market. And Zaheo could guess what expression Li Danny had on her face. But there was one thing he needed to learn from Tongning. If he met a god, he would slay a god. If he met a Buddha, he would slay a Buddha. After their trip to Moscow, Tongning was scheduled to film a promotional advertisement for a famous jewelry brand. Tongning was looking forward to it. However, the night before they returned to China, Zaheo found out that Tongning was only going to endorse the brand's wedding ring line, while Li Danny was going to be the global spokesperson. It seemed Li Danny wanted to use this method to show Tongning what it meant to be an international model and what it meant to be an A-grade model. Zaheo originally wanted to reject a portion of the endorsement, but Tongning told him, accept it. But, by doing this, it was obvious to the public that Tongning was below Li Danny. In fact, the gap wasn't just a small one. And Zaheo looked at Immerse, hoping he would say something to stop Tongning. But Immerse uncharacteristically supported Tongning. Why? Because he had a plan. Zaheo, I don't have the energy to compete with her right now. I simply want to challenge myself. Plus, I really like this jewelry brand. Tongning had no idea what Immerse was planning. She simply told Zaheo in seriousness, do you like it? As long as you like it, Immerse thought without batting an eyelid. Chapter 151. After her vision shoot was completed, Immerse arranged for a few people to secretly return to China. Afterwards, Tongning and Zaheo reported to Changtian while Immerse headed straight to Hairui Entertainment to deal with the work he had accumulated over the past few days. As he lowered his eyes, he suddenly remembered something as he called Lu Che into his office. President, help me contact the CEO of LM. I want to meet with him, Immerse instructed as he signed some documents. Does the president want to order a wedding ring? Lu Che guessed. LM's full name was Lovemore. It was an old jewelry brand that originated in Italy and had over 100 years of history. Its design had always been famous for being unique and precious. Sort of. After saying these two words, Immerse lifted his head and warned Lu Che, watch your mouth. Lu Che smiled and nodded his head as he made a gesture that signaled he would keep his mouth shut. But even if I order one, the madam can't wear it. That's not something you should be worried about. Since he could order a wedding ring, of course, Tongning could wear it without hesitation. Meanwhile, Zaheo and Tongning arrived at Changtian Entertainment. As soon as the employees saw them, they looked at each other strangely. Zaheo and Tongning looked at each other without saying a word until they entered the office and saw Lan Shi. You've worked hard, Tongning. Lan Shi stood up from her seat and walked over to Tongning as she patted the back of her hand. But you can't stop your schedule. In 2 days, LM will be shooting for a commercial. They have already sent us the information of the male celebrity you will be working with. It is actor Ling Feng. Tongning, he is currently a very popular actor. You need to grab hold of this opportunity. Tongning received the information from Lan Shi and smiled gently. I recognize this actor. Although he is only in his early 20s, he has already been involved in numerous scandals with women, and Zaheo furrowed his brows as he received the information from Tongning. Isn't it a good idea to promote each other? Lan Shi disagreed. But, you know Tongning. And Zaheo did not say the second half of his sentence because he knew Lan Shi would be unhappy. She obviously knew Tongning already had a lover, yet she still wanted Tongning to accept an actress to create hype. Was this what Lan Shi meant when she said she would give Tongning the best resources? It's decided then. I have a dinner with Ling Feng tonight. You guys go back and rest first to get used to the jet lag. We'll meet at the dinner at 8 p.m. Tongning turned around and glanced at Zaheo without saying a word. From an outsider's perspective, she appeared to be a submissive person. But, Zaheo knew, she definitely wouldn't create hype. If she wanted to, she wouldn't still be an A-grade model. President Lan, do you not have confidence in me? Tongning, you're already 26. If you don't make the most of your time, when will you be able to achieve something else? Lan Shi directly used her age as an excuse. I'm doing this so you can relax a little. Tongning's gaze turned cold as she looked at Lan Shi with a sharp gaze. President Lan, I know Tongning, you have your own ideas. But you need to trust me. This industry is dirtier than you think. So, no one is going to give up such a good opportunity. You can't either. Lan Shi interrupted as she used her identity as the CEO to pressure Tongning. Tongning continued to look at Lan Shi without a word. However, Zaheo suddenly stepped in between the two women. Lan Shi, you may be the CEO, but Tongning is still my artist. If you decide on Tongning's schedule so casually, what else do you want me to do? Lan Shi looked at Zaheo with a complex expression. It was as though her partner of many years had unknowingly started to have feelings for someone else. Plus, Tongning has already suffered so much in Moscow. Her body isn't feeling well. Let her get some rest. Okay, Tongning nodded. Lan Shi endured for a moment before she said to Tongning, "Go home with your assistant first. Zaheo and I still have a few things to discuss." And Zaheo glanced at Tongning, gesturing for her not to worry. Tongning nodded her head as she turned and left Lan Shi's office without looking back. She had no intention of fawning over Lan Shi. All of a sudden, only Lan Shi and Zaheo were left in the office. The atmosphere was a little awkward, but Lan Shi couldn't hold back her anger. "You've only just started and you're already disobeying my orders?" And Zaheo shook his head as he looked at Lan Shi seriously. "Lan Shi, if Tongning wanted to use someone to create hype, she wouldn't have considered joining Chung Tian. Chung Tian Entertainment has always disdained doing things like this. When did this start?" Lan Shi's expression changed slightly. "Plus, the contract states that Tongning has the right to reject any of your suggestions. You haven't forgotten, right? Tongning is so patient. Why do you have to be so aggressive?" Lan Shi remained silent for quite some time. In the end, she looked into Zaheo's eyes and said, "Zaheo, have you been tamed by Tongning?" "I haven't been tamed by anyone. It's just that you are no longer the original Lan Shi." And Zaheo replied without backing down. "In that case, who is going to attend tonight's banquet? I will think of a way to explain things to them." And Zaheo couldn't possibly allow Tongning to attend. Otherwise, the news would be all over the news the next day, and he couldn't allow Lan Shi to lose face. After all, she was the CEO. Hearing this, Lan Shi's expression softened a little. In the end, she simply said one sentence with deep meaning. "I'm suddenly starting to regret signing Tongning." "That's because you realize Tongning doesn't listen to you?" After speaking, and Zaheo stood up from the sofa. However, his heart was slowly starting to feel disappointed. He didn't know when Chung Tian and Lan Shi had become like this. After leaving the office, Tongning waited for Zaheo at the entrance. Their eyes met. They both understood each other. "I've made things difficult for you. You didn't do anything wrong. Otherwise, if you compromised and went out for dinner today, I would have arranged for you to sell your body tomorrow." And Zaheo replied, "Tongning, I know what you want. I will definitely give you what you want." Tongning sighed and let out a laugh. "I originally thought there was a place in the industry that wasn't so dirty." "There is, your husband's company." And Zaheo winked at Tongning. Tongning let out a gentle laugh. "With my current status, it's still acceptable for me to compete with people of the same level. If I continue to go against Lan Shi like this, then I won't have a good ending in the future. Since I've become your manager, I will take care of everything." And Zaheo promised. "All you need to do is walk your runway and shoot your magazine. That's all." "Thank you. Take a look at LM's information. We'll be shooting the commercial in 2 days." "We will be shooting 2 days later," and Zaheo said as he shoved his right hand into his pocket. "But, before that, I need to deal with that Playboy link phone." You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.